There's something different about the forests of Maine. The way the fog rolls through the trees, moving like something alive. The way silence falls, not empty, but listening. They say when you step into a Maine forest at dusk, the trees don't just surround you. They watch you. They remember. And sometimes, if you're quiet enough, you can hear them whisper names that no one alive should know. So tonight, we're venturing beyond the well-lit paths, beyond the campgrounds and comfort of civilization. We're stepping into the woods where the lost never left. Welcome, my fearless wanderers, to the 25 most haunted forests in Maine, where whispers of the lost still echo. Maine's north woods stretch endlessly, a vast expanse of pines and evergreens that seems to go on forever. By day, sunlight filters through the branches, casting long shadows across the forest floor, and the air smells of damp earth and resin. But as night falls, or even in the dim light of early morning, the woods take on a different character. The north woods are silent in a way that unsettles anyone who ventures too far. A silence so absolute it amplifies every creak of a branch, every snap of a twig underfoot. Lumberjacks and longtime forest dwellers have always spoken of the quiet with a mixture of respect and unease, warning newcomers that the forest has its own rules and its own awareness, and that the silence is not always empty. Stories of the so-called endless whisper have circulated among those who work or wander in the woods. Lumberjacks often speak of hearing faint voices drifting between the trees, voices that cannot be attributed to any other human presence, even when they are miles from the nearest road or settlement. The whispers appear, soft yet insistent, curling through the branches like smoke. Some call it the whispering timber, a phenomenon that seems tied to the forest itself, while others believe it is the voices of those who vanished in the deep snow, cut off by winter storms, leaving behind only the memory of their work and lives. No matter the explanation, those who hear the whispers describe the sensation as profoundly unsettling. The sound is unlike any ordinary noise. It is not carried on the wind, nor is it the distant murmur of a brook or the rustle of animals in the underbrush. It is softer, intimate, and almost impossibly close, as if someone were standing just behind you, exhaling your name into your ear. The effect is so immediate and personal that it evokes a deep and primal sense of awareness, a feeling that the forest itself is observing, remembering, and waiting. Lumberjacks have reported hearing their own names spoken softly in familiar voices, echoing through the trees with a cadence that is neither threatening nor comforting, merely insistent. Those who pause often feel a sudden pressure on their skin, like a cold breath or a gentle brush of unseen fingers, a tactile accompaniment to the voices that intensifies the sensation of presence. Many of the stories trace back decades. Logging camps in the North Woods have historically been isolated and perilous. Winter storms could cut off entire crews, leaving men trapped for days or weeks, with food scarce and temperatures plummeting. Some lumberjacks vanished entirely, swallowed by the dense forest, leaving only abandoned camps, splintered equipment, and whispered memories behind. It is said that the forest remembers these men, not in the way humans remember, but as a kind of echo embedded in the trees themselves. Every fallen pine, every cleared path, every distant ridge is saturated with the history of labor, fear, and sometimes tragedy. And those who enter the woods may encounter fragments of that memory through the whispers. Visitors to the North Woods often describe sudden disorientation when the phenomenon occurs. A man might be following a familiar trail when he hears his name called just behind him. Turning, he finds nothing but the endless trees stretching into shadow. The voices rarely issue clear commands, but the effect is overwhelming. Some hear fragments of conversation, calls for help, or even warnings. Others report hearing laughter, soft and hollow, sometimes interspersed with sobs or the muted clatter of tools striking wood, echoing across the still forest. The sounds are so delicate and precise that it is impossible to locate their source, and they vanish the instant one attempts to focus directly on them, leaving only the echo of the memory in the listener's mind. Seasonal changes seem to amplify the whispers. In winter, when snow blankets the forest and the wind is dead, the voices are said to be clearer, sharper, and more insistent. The forest, muffled by the heavy white snow, carries sound in strange ways, and the cold itself seems to heighten awareness, making every faint noise feel immediate and inescapable. Spring and summer bring their own versions, the rustle of leaves, the hum of insects, and the distant cries of birds create a layered background in which the whispers can emerge suddenly, startling anyone who is unprepared. Many who enter the forest in the warmer months report hearing the voices between the trees, drawing them deeper into the woods, as if the forest seeks to guide or warn them. Some believe the phenomenon is a warning, a way for the forest to remind humans of its vastness and the respect it demands. Others think it is a manifestation of the past, a way for those lost to leave a mark on the living. Lumberjacks, hikers, and hunters share tales of turning suddenly to see a shadow among the trees or a movement at the edge of perception, only for the presence to vanish the instant it is confronted. There is a shared understanding that the forest is not malevolent, exactly, but it is relentless in its own awareness. Indifferent to human desire or fear, to ignore it is to invite unease. To acknowledge it is to recognize that the forest carries stories beyond the comprehension of those who walk its paths. Those who have spent significant time in the North Woods often develop strategies to cope. They speak softly, leave markers, or avoid walking alone after dark. Yet even the most experienced cannot fully escape the whispers. There is a consensus that silence, too, can be dangerous. For the soft voices often arrive where one least expects them. Those who dismiss the whispers entirely risk disorientation, panic, or even wandering off course, becoming just another name carried in the forest's memory. The endless whisper is a phenomenon without full explanation, one that blends sound, memory, and presence into an experience that is deeply human yet profoundly otherworldly. It is part of the North Woods, woven into the pines and the frost, the trails and the hidden clearings, a reminder that this forest is older and more aware than anyone can comprehend. Lumberjacks and travelers alike have learned to respect the whispers, to listen, to acknowledge, and, above all, to move carefully, for the forest remembers, and it never forgets. Baxter State Park, nestled in the rugged wilderness of northern Maine, is a place of immense natural beauty and haunting mystery. At its heart stands Mount Katahdin, a peak revered by the Penobscot people as the dwelling of Pamola, a winged spirit who guards the mountain and the surrounding forests. The park draws hikers, campers, and nature enthusiasts from across the country, eager to traverse its dense woods, rocky trails, and pristine lakes. Yet alongside its breathtaking vistas, Baxter State Park has long been associated with unexplained phenomena. Encounters with entities that seem to exist between the natural and the supernatural, and tales that have been whispered around campfires for generations. Among these stories, none is more persistent or chilling than that of the phantom hiker. Hikers traversing the remote trails of Baxter State Park sometimes report encounters with a figure that appears at first completely ordinary. Witnesses describe a man in ragged, worn clothing, carrying a backpack or simple walking stick, moving steadily along the trail as though he belongs there. At first glance, he seems like any other hiker, blending into the shadows of the dense forest. But when approached, the figure vanishes in an instant, disappearing mid-step, leaving no trace of where he went. Several hikers have described the experience with the same sense of disbelief, often questioning whether their eyes played tricks on them or if the figure was a hallucination induced by exhaustion. Yet the consistency of reports across years and locations suggests something far stranger is at play. The sightings are not limited to hikers on the trails. Campers within the park have also experienced phenomena linked to the phantom hiker. When they venture outside to investigate, no one is ever seen, yet the ground tells a different story. Footprints appear pressed deep into the soil, sometimes encircling tents entirely, as if left by a figure that is at once human in shape and yet something else entirely. The tracks often vanish as mysteriously as the figure itself, leaving campers with an unnerving impression that they had been observed, studied, or tested by something beyond comprehension. Some hikers report that the phantom hiker does not behave like a typical human. Its movements are too smooth, too deliberate, sometimes seeming to glide rather than walk. At times, it appears to anticipate their actions, appearing at junctions before they reach them or vanishing in ways that defy explanation. A few have described moments when the figure seemed to pause, watching them intently. Yet without any facial features they could discern, creating the impression of a presence that is sentient but entirely alien. One hiker noted that the figure's outline sometimes shimmered against the dense forest backdrop, as if it existed partly in another dimension, visible only to those attuned to the mountain's secrets. The legend of the phantom hiker is closely tied to the spiritual significance of Mount Katahdin. The Penobscot people have long warned that the mountain is sacred, inhabited by Pamola, a winged spirit who protects the forests, rivers, and all who enter the domain. According to tradition, those who disrespect the mountain or venture carelessly into its depths may encounter Pamola's presence or that of his emissaries' entities that test, warn, or repel intruders. Some interpret the phantom hiker as one such emissary, a guardian figure that appears to remind visitors that they are in a space governed by forces beyond the ordinary. The connection between the sightings and the sacred nature of Katahdin adds weight to the experiences, framing them not as random hallucinations but as encounters with something tied to the land as spiritual essence. Accounts of the phantom hiker share recurring patterns that make the experiences particularly unsettling. Witnesses consistently describe ragged clothing, a lone figure moving along remote trails, sudden disappearance, and the inexplicable pressure of being watched. Campers' nighttime encounters often involve footprints forming circles around tents, with no other signs of disturbance. Many describe a feeling of presence so strong that it is physically palpable, a weight in the air, a tingling along the spine, a sense of being studied by an unseen consciousness. The phenomenon is rarely violent, yet it inspires a deep, instinctive fear, as if the mountain itself is aware of the human intrusion and is silently judging each step. The phantom hiker is also associated with weather patterns and terrain. Sightings tend to occur on higher trails, near rocky ridges, or in dense pine groves where visibility is limited. Fog, snow, and early morning mists often accompany these appearances, adding a layer of unreality to the experience. Witnesses report that the figure seems to thrive in isolation, appearing only when the observer is alone or in very small groups. This isolation intensifies the psychological effect, amplifying the sense of vulnerability and the uncanny nature of the encounter. Some experienced hikers have learned to respect the mountain's warnings, proceeding carefully and quietly through areas where the phantom hiker has been reported. They avoid unnecessary noise, stay on marked trails, and maintain awareness of their surroundings, acknowledging that Baxter State Park is not merely a recreational space, but a living, breathing landscape charged with history and spiritual energy. Others, however, leave the park shaken, eager to return to the ordinary world, haunted by the figure that seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish just as suddenly. Ultimately, the phantom hiker embodies the intersection of natural beauty, human vulnerability, and the unknown. It is a presence that reminds all who enter Baxter State Park that the wilderness is ancient, sentient in ways we cannot fully grasp, and steeped in traditions and spirits that predate modern maps and trails. Hikers and campers leave the mountain with memories that are difficult to reconcile, glimpses of a figure that may not be human, footprints that defy explanation, and the haunting sensation that the forest itself is alive, watching, and remembering. The legend continues to grow with each new account, a reminder that even in the age of GPS and digital maps, some paths are not meant to be fully understood, and some presences are never meant to be ignored. Gulfhaga's Gorge, often called the Grand Canyon of the East, cuts a dramatic swath through the forests of Maine. Its jagged cliffs, moss-covered boulders, and cascading waterfalls create a landscape of both breathtaking beauty and subtle menace. By day, hikers are drawn to its rugged trails and the roar of the falls, which pound the rocks below with relentless force. The sound is hypnotic, masking the quiet whispers of the forest, the distant calls of birds, and even the voices of other hikers. Yet for those who venture into the gorge alone, the beauty comes with an unsettling reality. The area is said to carry the echoes of past tragedies, a subtle, persistent presence that has earned it the reputation of being haunted, and for some terrifying locals speak cautiously of the phenomena. They tell stories of hikers who have heard voices rising above the thunder of waterfalls, voices that beg for help, sob softly, or laugh with a tone that is almost human, yet impossibly distant. Some claim the sounds are disembodied, drifting over the river, moving along the cliffs, or echoing through narrow chasms. Even experienced outdoorsmen describe the sensation of someone or something watching, as though the gorge itself is aware of each step, each pause, each breath. The phenomenon has been called the screams beneath the falls, and despite the gorge's stunning allure, the stories have kept many from hiking its more remote paths alone. Hikers report that the voices are not random. Often, they seem to interact with movement, reacting to footsteps or changes in direction. A lone trekker might hear a soft cry over the roar of the falls, and as they turn toward it, the sound shifts, moving with them, yet remaining just beyond reach. Others describe laughter that feels deliberate, almost teasing, echoing from ledges and boulders as though someone or something is tracking their progress. The auditory phenomena are unpredictable but persistent, appearing most frequently near the gorge's waterfalls, where the thunderous sound of cascading water makes the whispers all the more eerie. Disappearances add to Gulfhaga's reputation. Over the years, more than one hiker has vanished without explanation. In some cases, their gear is later found arranged neatly near the water, as if left intentionally. Backpacks are placed beside boulders, shoes lined up at the edge of a pool, and jackets folded on logs. No signs of struggle or panic are ever present. It is as though the person simply disappeared into the gorge, leaving behind only carefully positioned reminders of their existence. These incidents have fueled speculation that the gorge itself may be alive in some way, claiming those who wander too far or fail to heed the warnings carried in the whispers. For those who remain, the sensation of being observed grows stronger, an invisible pressure pressing against the mind and body, demanding awareness and caution. The natural acoustics of the gorge seem to amplify these experiences. Waterfalls pound the rocks with incredible force, creating a constant, booming background that masks subtle sounds and distorts perception. The cliffs and narrow channels reflect noises unpredictably, making it impossible to locate their source. A soft sob or whispered plea might appear to come from just ahead, only to echo from behind seconds later. Some hikers have described feeling the vibrations of the falls resonate through the soil and their bones, a tactile reminder of the gorge's immense power and the precariousness of being alone in such a place. Observers have also noted that the water itself seems to whisper back. The currents appear to carry faint murmurs over the rocks, blending seamlessly with the human-like voices that echo above. Some hikers describe hearing warnings, instructions, or names in the rush of the falls, a phenomenon that is both mesmerizing and unnerving. One veteran outdoorsman reported kneeling beside a pool at the base of a waterfall and distinctly hearing a voice say, "Turn back now," even though he was miles from the trailhead and had not spoken aloud. The combination of rushing water and subtle human-like tones creates a sensory experience that is difficult to rationalize, one that lingers long after leaving the gorge. The gorge's history provides a context that deepens the sense of unease. It has long been a place of both natural beauty and hidden danger. Locals believe that the cries heard above the falls are the residual energy of these lost souls, voices caught between worlds, eternally wandering along the cliffs and waters they once knew. Others speculate that the gorge's geography itself contributes to the phenomena, creating pockets where sound carries unnaturally, tricking the human mind into perceiving voices and presences where none exist. Despite the danger and eerie reputation, Gulfhaga's continues to draw adventurers, photographers, and wilderness enthusiasts. For many, the thrill of the gorge's dramatic scenery outweighs the risk of encountering its supernatural elements. Experienced hikers advise caution, Never travel alone. Remain aware of the surroundings and respect the power of the falls and the forest. Those who have experienced the whispers describe a combination of awe and terror, a recognition that the gorge is more than just a collection of rocks and water. It is a living memory, a space where human presence intersects with forces beyond understanding. Campfires along the rim often echo the stories of those who have heard the screams beneath the falls. Yet, for every tale of fear, there is also a fascination, a desire to witness the gorge's hidden depths, to hear the whispers, and to see if they, too, will encounter the mysterious presence that so many before them have described. Ultimately, Gulfhogger's Gorge is a place of paradox, breathtakingly beautiful, yet quietly sinister, alive with the sounds of water and wildlife, yet haunted by voices that may never be explained. The falls roar relentlessly, drowning out ordinary noise. But if one listens closely, the whispers rise, merging with the current, teasing and warning, beckoning and terrifying. Those who hike here alone feel the weight of the gorge's secrets. A reminder that even in the wildest corners of nature, echoes of the lost remain, and sometimes, the water itself answers back. Aroostook State Forest stretches across northern Maine, a dense expanse of pine, spruce, and birch that has remained largely untouched for centuries. By day, the forest seems serene, alive with the rustle of leaves, birdsong, and the occasional crack of branches underfoot. Yet when storms roll in and darkness descends, the forest transforms into a place of uneasy quiet, where even the most familiar paths feel alien. For generations, travelers, hunters, and hikers have whispered about an entity known as the Lantern Man, a spectral figure said to appear during blizzards and heavy storms, carrying a flickering yellow light that lures the unwary deeper into the woods. The legend dates back to the 1800s, when a trapper named Elias Thompson, or so the stories claim, perished during a fierce winter storm. Armed with only a lantern, he tried to navigate the forest's labyrinthine trails, but the snow came down in relentless sheets, obscuring the paths and covering his footprints almost as soon as they were made. Local accounts suggest that his final movements were desperate, filled with attempts to find shelter before succumbing to the cold. When his body was found days later, it was said that the lantern had dimmed to a weak, flickering glow. The memory of that night, and the lonely figure carrying a light through the blizzard, persisted in oral history, eventually becoming the Lantern Man, a spectral guide door trap for those who enter the forest during storms. Modern travelers have continued to report encounters on nights when the wind cuts through the trees and snow or rain falls thickly. A faint yellow glow sometimes appears between the trunks. It pulses softly, like the breathing of a living thing, distant but steadily moving. Hikers describe the instinctual urge to follow it, drawn by curiosity, fear, or a strange fascination that overrides rational thought. The glow seems alive, weaving through the trees, never pausing, leading pursuers further into the dense forest, where trails vanish and familiar landmarks disappear beneath the storm. Those who have followed the Lantern Man speak of a peculiar pattern. The light moves deliberately, almost playfully, drawing attention, then retreating slightly, always tempting the observer to continue. Paths that seemed clear vanish, undergrowth thickens unnaturally, and snow or mud obscures footprints, as if the forest itself conspires to confuse the follower. Yet the lantern persists, an unwavering presence in the storm, beckoning those who dared to chase it deeper and deeper. Many describe the eerie sensation of being watched, not from behind, but from all around, a pressure in the air that feels heavy, intelligent, and omnipresent. The climax of most encounters is terrifyingly consistent. After following the flickering light for what feels like hours, the lantern often halts suddenly in a small clearing or at the edge of a dense thicket. When the observer approaches the spot, the glow vanishes, swallowed by the darkness, leaving behind a chill that seeps into the bones. In its place stands a dark figure, tall and featureless, often described as motionless, yet unnervingly aware. The figure may appear to wait, silently observing the intruder, who has been drawn off the trail. Some have described feeling a magnetic pull from the figure, an almost hypnotic insistence that they are trespassing into a space not meant for humans. Panic and disorientation follow quickly, prompting many to retreat, scrambling back to familiar paths, or, in some cases, wandering in circles until help arrives or exhaustion forces them to find shelter. The forest's conditions seem to amplify the legend. Stormy nights, especially during snowfalls, fog, or heavy rain, create a natural disorientation. Visibility is limited, sounds are distorted, and shadows stretch unnaturally. The yellow lantern light, dim against a backdrop of darkness, seems to move with intent, creating the illusion of intelligence and purpose. Even those who know the forest well can become lost, their sense of direction overridden by the lantern man's eerie guidance. The combination of natural hazards, historical context, and human psychology has ensured that the legend persists. As each new generation of hikers adds their own encounter to the folklore, some encounters are subtle, almost gentle, leaving witnesses with a lingering sense of unease rather than outright terror. Hikers report glimpses of the lantern from afar, fleeting movements that vanish when approached, or shadows that flicker across the snow, like the passage of a phantom. The light sometimes appears just beyond the trees, then retreats as though teasing or testing the observer. Even without a direct confrontation with the dark figure, the presence of the lantern man leaves an impression, a memory of being watched, guided, or even warned. Those who respect the forest's power often retreat without incident, while those who pursue recklessly find themselves in situations that defy explanation. Local lore emphasizes caution. The lantern man is described as neither malevolent nor benevolent. It is a force, a remnant of history, a presence tied to the forest's memory. Ignoring its existence, locals warn, can lead to confusion, fear, or even physical danger. The forest, after all, is vast, ancient, and patient. It remembers those who enter its depths, especially those who are drawn by curiosity rather than preparation. Ultimately, a rustic state forest is more than a collection of trees and trails. It is a space where history, nature, and legend converge, creating an experience that challenges perception and tests courage. The lantern man is the forest's enduring reminder that human presence in such untamed wilderness is temporary, fragile, and, at times, unwelcome. Travelers who encounter the flickering yellow light and the dark figure behind it are forever changed, carrying the memory of a forest that is alive in ways that cannot be fully explained. Those who respect it leave with stories. Those who chase it may find themselves lost in both snow and shadow, forever chasing the glow that disappears just when it seems closest. Kennebunkport Woods, perched near Maine's rugged coastline, stretches in dense, tangled expanses of oak, pine, and maple. By day, the forest appears serene, bathed in sunlight and shadow, with the distant call of gulls and the murmur of the nearby river completing its idyllic scenery. Trails wind through mossy undergrowth, and the air carries the faint tints of salt from the ocean. Yet when the sun dips below the horizon, the woods take on a different character, one that unsettles even the most experienced locals. It is here, in the dim, uneven light of dusk and night, that stories of the laughing girl have persisted for decades. Whispered around campfires and recounted by those who have wandered too far along the silent paths. The legend tells of a young girl who once played along the river that runs adjacent to the woods. In life, she was cheerful and curious, often exploring the trees and meadows with a rope swing that hung over the water. One summer, she drowned in the river under circumstances that remain unclear. Accident, a slip, or perhaps something more sinister. Her disappearance left a mark on the community, a lingering sense of loss that quickly intertwined with the strange occurrences that would follow in the forest. Since then, those who traverse the woods at night have reported hearing a child's laughter drifting among the trees, faint but unmistakable, echoing with an almost otherworldly cadence. The laughter is the first sign that something is amiss. It starts softly, a high, tinkling sound that seems distant at first. But as hikers or late-night wanderers progress deeper into the forest, the sound often grows closer, almost as if the girl is following them, moving just beyond reach. It is not merely innocent or playful. There is a strange quality to it, an undertone that feels mocking, teasing, and at times chillingly familiar. Those who hear it describe a sensation that the forest itself has shifted, that the trees lean in, the shadows lengthen, and the ordinary sounds of the woods, the rustle of leaves, the snapping of twigs, the distant river fade into a singular focus on the laughter. Along with the laughter, other phenomena accompany the encounters. Many report the soft creak of a rope swing, even when no swing exists. The sound is sudden, precise, and unmistakable, as if a weight has shifted in the air, or the girl herself has momentarily returned to the forest to play. Some hikers describe glimpsing movement at the periphery of Vijuna, small figure flitting between trees. A flash of light that resembles a child's dress, but when they turn to look directly, nothing remains. Others have felt a presence behind them, warm and close, and yet when they glance back, the shadows hold no form. The combination of auditory and visual phenomena creates a disorienting, almost playful terror, as if the laughing girl invites observers to join a game they cannot win. The forest itself seems complicit in these encounters. Branches twist in ways that obscure the path. Roots rise from the soil to trip the inattentive, and fog or coastal mist drifts in unexpectedly, muffling footsteps and distorting distance. The river, so central to the girl's story, often plays its own role, producing gurgling sounds, splashes, or the occasional wet cough that seems unnervingly human. Some hikers recount hearing the laughter followed by a wet cough, a pause in the sounds, and then silence leaving them, unsure if what they experienced was memory, imagination, or a spectral echo of the drowned girl herself. Local residents have shared their own encounters, sometimes with children, sometimes alone. A fisherman returning late from the riverbank described hearing a girl's giggle from deep within the trees, followed by a soft cough, and then a quiet that pressed in around him like a tangible weight. Another account tells of a couple hiking along a narrow trail when the laughter seemed to circle them, appearing first on one side, then the other, echoing from behind the trees. The feeling, they said, was not just eerie but mocking, as though the forest itself enjoyed the confusion, the sense of being watched, and the impossibility of finding the source. The laughing girl has become a defining feature of Kennebunkport Woods' local folklore, a cautionary tale for hikers, campers, and teenagers wandering the forest at night. Parents warn their children not to stray near the river after dark, while hikers share stories of encounters with a mixture of fear and fascination. The repeated theme is clear. The forest transforms at night, becoming a place where innocence and menace intertwine, where laughter carries a warning, and where the past refuses to remain buried. Psychologists and folklorists have suggested explanations ranging from natural acoustics and echoing wildlife to the human brain's tendency to pattern ambiguous sounds into familiar voices. Yet these rationalizations rarely satisfy those who have experienced the phenomena firsthand. The combination of laughter, the phantom swing, sudden wet coughs, and fleeting glimpses of a child creates a multisensory experience that feels both alive and impossible to ignore. In the minds of witnesses, the laughing girl is neither fully malevolent nor benign. She is a presence that reminds the living of the river, the forest, and the lingering edge between life and death. For those who traverse Kennebunkport Woods after dark, caution is advised. The trails are winding, the forest thick, and the air heavy with the sound of wind through the trees. Yet the true danger or fascination comes from the laughter itself. To hear it is to know the forest is awake, aware, and aware of you. The game she plays is subtle, a test of attention, a reminder that some places are marked by history and memory, and that those echoes can persist long after a life has ended. The laughing girl remains a permanent, eerie companion to the night in Kennebunkport Woods. Hikers who hear her giggle, feel her presence, or glimpse her fleeting form carry that memory long after leaving the forest, a reminder that even in the quiet, peaceful woods of Maine, some presences refuse to rest. The soft creak of a swing, the tinkling laughter, and the occasional wet cough are all that remains of her story, and a chilling invitation to anyone daring enough to explore the woods alone at night. The Bigelow Preserve, nestled in the rugged expanse of Maine's Bigelow Mountains, is a landscape both beautiful and unforgiving. Jagged peaks rise sharply against the sky, dense forests cover the slopes, and rivers and streams carve deep valleys through the wilderness. By day, hikers and campers are drawn to the preserve's breathtaking views, the scent of pine, and the crisp mountain air. Yet, as night falls, the mountains take on a different character, one that has inspired whispered legends for generations. Among the most persistent stories are those of the Shadow Watchers, mysterious entities said to observe humans from the depths of the forest. Their presence, as unsettling as it is unexplainable. Campers in the Bigelow Preserve often report a sense of being watched, a feeling that lingers even in the silence of the mountains. Small campfires crackle in the darkness, illuminating tents and cooking gear, yet shadows seem to move just beyond the edge of the glow. Hikers have described glowing eyes appearing between trees, faint red or amber lights that reflect with an intensity that seems almost intelligent. The eyes are never still, shifting from tree to tree, tracking movements, pausing when the observer stops, and always retreating when approached. The effect is subtle but deeply unnerving, creating the impression that the forest itself is alive with sentient presence. The accounts do not end with sight alone. Thermal cameras set up by outdoor enthusiasts and researchers have captured human-like shapes moving on all fours, darting between the trees and disappearing into the darkness. These figures are often glimpsed at the periphery of vision, hunched shapes that appear more animal than human, yet move with an uncanny awareness. Many hikers dismiss them initially, attributing them to shadows, wildlife, or trickery of light. But repeated sightings have made the stories difficult to ignore. And strange silhouettes is enough to disturb sleep, disrupt plans, and leave a lingering anxiety long after leaving the mountains. Rangers and park officials typically offer rational explanations, pointing to deer, bears, or other wildlife as the source of the glowing eyes and unusual shapes. Red-eye reflection is common in nocturnal animals, and shadows can appear distorted in the uneven terrain of the Bigelow Mountains. Yet those who have spent years hiking the trails and camping in remote areas often disagree. Experienced outdoorsmen claim that what they saw cannot be explained by ordinary wildlife. The eyes seem purposeful, tracking movement with intent, and the forms captured on thermal cameras behave in ways no known animal would, moving with deliberate crouches and agile unnatural motions. These inconsistencies have cemented the legend of the Shadow Watchers in local folklore. The Watchers are said to serve as guardians of the mountains, ancient spirits tasked with protecting sacred ground. The preserve's wilderness is both fragile and formidable, and locals believe that human presence is meant to be temporary, limited, and respectful. According to legend, those who ignore the Watchers' warnings risk misfortune, disorientation, or an encounter that forces them to retreat. Hikers have recounted stories of being subtly guided away from restricted areas, tents mysteriously unzipped in the night, or hearing soft footsteps circling the campsite, always at a distance, never directly confronting, but always reminding the humans of their presence. Some encounters are fleeting, almost playful, while others are undeniably sinister. Campers have reported the sudden snapping of branches near their tents, the rustle of leaves when no wind blows, and faint breathing sounds carried on the night air. The glowing eyes sometimes vanish when approached, only to reappear moments later at a higher vantage point, or further along the ridge. A few hikers claim to have heard low, murmuring voices emanating from deep within the forest, indecipherable but charged with an unearthly intent. The cumulative effect is a pervasive feeling of being monitored, tested, and reminded that the mountains are not entirely human territory. Seasonal changes influence the intensity of these sightings. Winter brings long nights and dense snow, which can make thermal anomalies more noticeable, while spring and summer floods the forest with insects, wildlife, and longer shadows, creating conditions where movement is harder to track, and the eyes appear suddenly in unexpected places. Even experienced hikers notice that the Watchers appear most frequently in remote areas, far from trails, campgrounds, and other human activity, suggesting an intelligence that avoids casual observation. It is as though the preserve itself, through the watchers, exercises authority over those who enter, maintaining the boundaries between human and wild. The legend has persisted for decades because it resonates with something primal. Humans have long been conditioned to sense eyes watching them, and in the dense forests of the Bigelow Mountains, that instinct is amplified. The combination of visual cues, strange movement, and unexplained sounds creates a multisensory experience that is difficult to rationalize. Many who have seen the eyes describe a cold chill spreading across their bodies, a tightening in the chest, and an instinctive need to leave. Others, more curious, have attempted to follow the glowing lights or approach the shapes, only to find themselves disoriented, losing time, or encountering the forms again from impossible angles. Despite rational explanations offered by officials, the stories of the shadow watchers endure. Passed down from hikers, campers, and local residents, they serve as warnings, as tales of respect for the wilderness, and as a reminder that the Bigelow Mountains are older and far more mysterious than any map or guidebook suggests. To witness the watchers is to confront the boundaries of human understanding, to experience the forest as something alive, aware, and ancient. Those who respect the presence leave quietly, their campfires extinguished, paths retraced, and a lingering sense of humility remaining long after the mountains have receded behind them. Ultimately, Bigelow Preserve is not only a place of natural beauty but a domain of unseen guardians, sentient shadows that monitor the living with unwavering vigilance. Whether spirit, animal, or something beyond comprehension, the Shadow Watchers remind all who enter that the wilderness is not a stage for human dominance. It is a living, breathing entity, ancient and watchful, keeping its secrets carefully hidden among the peaks, ridges, and forested slopes of Maine's rugged interior. Acadia National Park, perched along Maine's rugged coastline, is famed for its jagged cliffs, serene lakes, and dense forests. Tourists flock to its rocky shores to witness the sunrise over the Atlantic, hike the well-trodden trails, and explore the quiet beauty of places like Jordan Pond, Cadillac Mountain, and Otter Creek. Yet, amid the park's celebrated scenery, a darker presence has lingered for centuries, whispered about by locals and recounted in stories shared in quiet tones. The Vanishing Woman of Otter Creek. The legend begins in the 1800s. During a time when the coastal communities around Acadia were small, tightly knit, and heavily reliant on the sea, it is said that a woman, dressed in simple 19th-century clothing, suffered a personal tragedy near Otter Creek. Accounts vary. Some claim she lost her children to drowning. Others insist they were taken by disease, but all agree on the profound grief that consumed her. Locals reported seeing her walking along the water's edge, searching tirelessly, calling out for her lost children in a voice that carried over the waves. Her sorrow was palpable, so heavy that it seemed to linger in the mist, mixing with the smell of salt and seaweed along the shore. Even today, the Vanishing Woman is reported at dusk, often when fog rolls in from the Atlantic, blurring the edges of land and sea. Visitors to Otter Creek have described seeing a figure standing by the water, her long dress drifting in the evening breeze, face obscured by mist. The apparition is quiet at first, motionless and hauntingly still, blending almost seamlessly with the surrounding landscape. Yet there is an aura about her, a sense of longing and sorrow that feels tangible, as if the air itself carries the weight of her grief. Hikers who approach her often describe an eerie sensation, a pull toward the figure that is at once magnetic and unnerving. Those who follow her along the path report a consistent, chilling interaction. At some point, she turns, and in a voice soft and tremulous, asks, "Have you seen my children?" The words are simple, but the emotion behind them is raw, filled with anguish, desperation, and a longing that seems to stretch across centuries. Those who have encountered her describe a moment of disorientation, an inability to respond, as if the figure exists partly outside the normal flow of time. The question lingers in the mind long after she has vanished, pressing upon the conscience of anyone who dares to follow her. The disappearance is always sudden. Before anyone can offer an answer, she fades into the fog, leaving behind no trace of her presence beyond the faint scent of seaweed and lilac. A fragrance that seems out of place, yet unmistakably linked to her. The scent is often the only indication that she was ever there, lingering in the air as a reminder that some presences refuse to remain anchored to the mortal world. Many hikers report feeling an eerie emptiness in the moments after she vanishes. A hollow silence that carries a weight far heavier than the ordinary sounds of the forest or the creek. Acadia's natural features seem to enhance the haunting. The cliffs and rocky outcrops along Otter Creek create pockets where fog clings stubbornly, and where echoes can carry in unusual ways. The creek itself, fed by tidal shifts and hidden springs, produces a gentle but persistent sound, the babbling of water mingling with the soft hiss of mist. Against this backdrop, the vanishing woman appears almost like a natural part of the landscape, yet her movements and presence defy ordinary explanation. It is precisely this intersection of natural beauty and inexplicable phenomena that has given the legend its enduring power. Local residents, particularly those whose families have lived near Acadia for generations, offered their own interpretations. Some claim that she is a residual spirit, her anguish so strong that it imprinted on the landscape, repeating her search for her children eternally. Others describe her as a guardian of the creek, a spectral figure ensuring that the past is remembered and that those who walk the paths of Otter Creek approach with reverence. Regardless of the interpretation, there is a shared understanding that encountering her is not merely a chance occurrence, but a meaningful, often unnerving, interaction with the park's hidden history. The encounters are rarely threatening. Hikers and campers who have experienced a vanishing woman speak of a sorrow that is palpable, not a menace. Yet the emotional intensity of the encounter is profound, leaving witnesses with a lingering sense of melancholy, a sudden empathy for a tragedy long past, and a realization that the forest and creek are repositories of human emotion, memory, and loss. Many describe an urge to turn back, to leave the path quietly, and to respect the presence that has briefly entered their lives. Those who return to Otter Creek often find themselves watching the fog, listening for whispers carried on the wind, and noting the faint scent of lilac mingled with the salt of the Atlantic. Even on bright, clear evenings, the creek retains a sense of anticipation, as if the vanishing woman might appear once more, searching for children who are no longer there, bound forever to her grief. Visitors are advised to walk respectfully, remain aware of the surroundings, and honor the stories that have endured for generations. The Vanishing Woman of Otter Creek is a reminder that Acadia National Park is more than just a collection of trails, cliffs, and streams. It is a place where history and tragedy linger, where the beauty of the natural world is intertwined with human sorrow, and where spirits may still walk along the paths, calling out across time. To witness her, even briefly, is to confront the weight of loss, the persistence of memory, and the fragile boundary between the living and the departed. For those who have seen her, the image of the woman in 19th century clothing, her face obscured by fog and the haunting question about her children, remains vivid, a haunting that lingers long after the fog lifts and the waves retreat from the shore. Cutler Coast Forest, perched along Maine's jagged coastline, stretches across steep cliffs that drop sharply into the Atlantic. By day, the forest is a tapestry of spruce, pine, and coastal shrubs, with trails winding along rocky ridges and panoramic views of the ocean below. The air is crisp, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed, and waves crash against the cliffs in a relentless rhythm. Yet, despite its natural beauty, the forest is shrouded in legend. Visitors and locals alike speak in hushed tones of the moaning mist, a phenomenon that occurs when fog drifts in from the ocean, bringing with it sounds that chill the blood and unsettle the mind. The phenomenon is most commonly reported during early mornings or late evenings, when the air is thick with moisture and visibility is low. As the fog rolls across the cliffs, hikers and coastal walkers often report hearing deep, guttural moans rising from the mist. The sound is unlike any wind or wave. It seems organic, resonant, and mournful. Some describe it as the ocean itself crying, a low, rolling lament that reverberates across the cliffs and echoes among the trees. The noises are unpredictable, appearing suddenly and fading just as quickly, leaving only the lingering sense of despair. Locals attribute the moaning mist to the spirits of sailors lost to the treacherous cliffs over the centuries. Cutler Coast has always been a perilous stretch of coastline, where sudden storms and hidden rocks have claimed countless lives. Ships wrecked on jagged outcrops, and seafarers lost their lives, their bodies sometimes never recovered. Residents claim that the moans are the cries of these lost souls, rising from the ocean and crawling up through the mist to the forest above. Those who have spent time on the cliffs report a chilling awareness that they are not alone, that something watches from the fog, and that the cries carry not only sorrow, but a sense of searching, as if the spirits are still seeking the homes they never reached. Hikers and photographers who venture into the Cutler Coast forest often recount their experiences with a mixture of awe and fear. Some hear the moans while sitting silently on cliffside benches, watching the fog swirl below. Others encounter it while navigating narrow trails, the sound seeming to follow them as they move. One hiker described a sudden, powerful wail that appeared to originate from the ocean itself. Though when he turned toward the water, he saw only a wall of mist and jagged rocks. The sound seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat, growing louder as his anxiety increased, and then fading to a whisper, leaving him disoriented and shivering. The forest amplifies the eeriness of the phenomenon. The cliffs and rocky outcrops create pockets where sound carries strangely, producing echoes that can be mistaken for multiple voices or shifting figures. Trees, bent and twisted by coastal winds, appear to lean toward the fog, as though straining to listen. Even the forest floor seems alive. The rustle of leaves and the creak of branches can be mistaken for footsteps, adding to the sense that the moaning mist is not simply a sound, but a presence stalking anyone who wanders too close. Those who experience it often report a heightened awareness, every shadow or movement interpreted as part of the haunting. Some encounters are accompanied by visual phenomena. Visitors describe seeing vague shapes emerging from the fog, human-like but distorted, moving just beyond the reach of sight. In one account, a lone photographer spotted a figure at the edge of the mist, hunched and motionless, then blinked, and it was gone. Others have felt the air shift suddenly, cold and damp, as though something had brushed past them, leaving an unnerving intimacy with the unseen. Even those who remain skeptical admit to a creeping sense of dread when the fog rolls in, an instinctive understanding that the forest and cliffs harbor something beyond explanation. The moaning mist is also tied to the rhythm of the ocean. Stormy days, when waves crash violently against the cliffs, tend to produce louder and more frequent sounds. During calm seas, the moans are softer, like distant murmurs, barely audible above the wind. Experienced locals believe that the intensity of the moaning corresponds to the number of souls lost in the ocean, or perhaps the emotional weight carried by the mist itself. Regardless of the cause, the effect is universally unsettling, creating a tangible connection between the land, the sea, and the spirits said to inhabit both. Visitors are advised to approach the forest and cliffs with respect and caution. The moaning mist is not merely folklore. It serves as a warning of the treacherous cliffs and unpredictable ocean. Yet it is more than a practical caution. Those who hear the moans often leave with an understanding that Cutler Coast Forest is a liminal space, where the living campers and hikers recount lingering feelings of sadness, unease, or melancholy long after leaving, as if the mist itself imprints the grief of the lost onto the living. Local guides and storytellers have kept the legend alive, recounting tales to visitors who pause at the cliffs to take in the view. They speak of sailors who never returned, of families waiting in vain on shore, and of the mist that carries voices from the past. The story is both a caution and a testament, reminding anyone who dares to explore the coastline that Maine's beauty has always coexisted with danger, and that the spirits of those who perished may remain, haunting the edge of land and sea. Ultimately, Cutler Coast Forest is a place where the natural and supernatural converge. The cliffs, the fog, and the roar of the Atlantic create a sensory experience that is both stunning and unsettling. The moaning mist stands as a persistent reminder of lives lost, tragedies remembered, and the thin veil between the living and the dead. To hear it is to confront the enduring sorrow of the past, to feel the cold brush of the unknown, and to recognize that even in the wild beauty of Maine's coast, some echoes refuse to fade, rising perpetually from the ocean and crawling through the mist toward the forest above. Moxie Falls Forest, tucked deep in the rugged interior of Maine, is home to one of the state's tallest waterfalls, a cascading torrent that plunges dramatically into a rocky gorge. By day, hikers are drawn to the roar of the water, the moss-covered rocks, and the dense stands of pine and spruce that surround the falls. The forest trails wind through thick undergrowth, past streams and old logging roads, and the air carries the scent of wet earth, pine resin, and mist from the falls. But amid the natural beauty, Moxie Falls Forest hides a dark and enduring legend, the ghost of the logger. The story dates back to the early 1900s, when logging was a dangerous and booming industry in Maine. A logger, known locally for his skill with an axe and his towering presence, was working near the falls when a massive tree he was felling snapped unexpectedly. The tree struck him in a tragic and sudden accident, decapitating him instantly. His co-workers could do nothing but watch in horror, and the tragedy left an indelible mark on the community. From that day forward, locals say that the logger never truly left the forest, bound instead to the place of his death by the violent energy of the accident. Visitors to Moxie Falls Forest often report a sense of unease as they approach the main trail to the waterfall. Some hikers have described the sudden feeling of being watched, even in areas where the forest is empty. The dense canopy and mist rising from the gorge create shifting shadows, and the sound of the falls, though loud, sometimes seems to be punctuated by unnatural noises, as though someone or something is moving rhythmically among the trees. Campers who set up tents nearby frequently awaken in the middle of the night to the unmistakable sound of chopping wood. The rhythm is deliberate and steady, an axe striking tree after tree. Yet, when they venture outside, they find no freshly felled trees, no footprints in the dirt, and no human presence at all. Those who hike after dark along the trails claim to have seen him. Witnesses describe a tall, broad-shouldered man, dressed in early 20th century logging attire, moving unnaturally along the path. His most terrifying feature is the absence of a head, a detail that simultaneously horrifies and fascinates those who glimpse him. Despite the gruesome appearance, the figure does not attack. Instead, he wanders with methodical purpose, swinging an invisible or spectral axe as he moves. Some hikers have noted that the figure seems to pause occasionally, turning slowly as if acknowledging the presence of the living before resuming his endless, silent labor. The logger's ghost seems drawn to the waterfall itself. Many sightings cluster near the base of Moxie Falls, where the roar of the water masks subtle noises. Some visitors describe the figure appearing momentarily in the mist, the spray from the falls drifting across him like smoke, then vanishing entirely when approached. Others report hearing low guttural groans accompanying the rhythmic chopping, sounds that echo unnervingly off the rock walls and resonate in the chest of anyone nearby. Even seasoned hikers, familiar with the terrain and accustomed to the natural sounds of the forest, have admitted that these noises carry a quality that feels distinctly human and impossibly close. Local folklore suggests that the logger is trapped in a perpetual cycle, reenacting the moment of his death or continuing the work he loved in life. The axe, ever in motion, is said to symbolize unfinished labor, while the headless appearance represents the violence that ended his existence. Witnesses often feel an intense combination of awe and fear, a recognition of both the dedication and the horror intertwined in the ghostly presence. To encounter him is to confront the raw, elemental forces of the forest, the danger of the wilderness, the suddenness of death, and the stubborn persistence of unresolved tragedy. The phenomenon is not limited to auditory or visual experiences alone. Campers and hikers have noted sudden drops in temperature around the waterfall, accompanied by a heavy stillness in the air. Birds and small animals often fall silent, as if aware of a presence too formidable to ignore. Some report that their compasses or electronic devices briefly malfunction, flickering or freezing entirely while the ghost is near, adding an additional layer of disorientation and mystery. These experiences reinforce the sense that the ghost of the logger is more than legend. It is a force within the forest itself, affecting both perception and environment. Those who respect the legend approach Moxie Falls with caution, setting up camp well away from the base of the waterfall and sticking to well-traveled trails during the day. Guides and locals warn against hiking alone after dusk, particularly near the old logging paths, where the ghost is most often sighted. Yet even with these precautions, the stories persist, passed down from generation to generation, each new encounter adding a fresh layer of fear and fascination to the lore of the forest. The enduring nature of the ghost story is tied to the forest's history and the human need to make sense of tragedy. The logger's death was sudden, violent, and shocking. A moment frozen in time that seems to echo endlessly among the trees and cliffs. In the dense, shadowed environment of Moxie Falls Forest, the forest itself becomes a stage for memory and haunting. The rhythmic chopping, the headless figure, and the cold, misty air combine to create an immersive experience that challenges both rational explanation and emotional composure. Ultimately, Moxie Falls Forest is more than a natural wonder. It is a repository of history, memory, and lingering presence. The ghost of the logger stands as a grim testament to the dangers of the wilderness, the suddenness of tragedy, and the resilience of spirits tied to the moments that define them. For those who hear the chopping in the night, glimpse the headless figure, or sense his silent presence along the trails, Moxie Falls offers a stark reminder that even in the most serene wilderness, death, memory, and legend are never far away. A Roanoke Bog boardwalk stretches quietly across one of Maine's most mysterious wetlands, a place where the earth seems to breathe with a rhythm all its own. By daylight, it is serene, a haven for birdwatchers, botanists, and hikers, who tread the narrow wooden path above dark waters, surrounded by tall grasses, moss-covered bog islands, and the occasional splash of a beaver or muskrat. The surface of the water reflects the sky like black glass, and the air is thick with the smell of damp earth and vegetation. Yet beneath this tranquil exterior, locals and visitors alike whisper of a deeper, more unsettling presence. The whisper beneath the water. The legend of the bog begins long before the boardwalk was constructed. Rooted in the history of the land itself, for centuries, the bog was a treacherous, shifting expanse of peat and water, a place where accidents were common and lives were sometimes claimed by the soft, deceptive ground. Stories circulated of people who vanished while collecting peat, hunters who strayed from dry patches, and children who wandered too far from the edges. Over time, these tragic events gave rise to tales of spirits lingering in the bog, their voices trapped just beneath the surface, bubbling upward when the wind and water allowed. Visitors describe the phenomenon in hauntingly similar ways. As they walk along the boardwalk, especially during early morning or late evening when fog hangs low, they sometimes hear faint murmurs rising from the water. The voices are fragmented, like whispers echoing through a distant pipe or drain, soft enough to require careful listening, yet distinct enough to suggest human speech. Some claim to hear their own names called, others catch phrases that hint at fear, loss, or warning. The sounds are irregular, unpredictable, and often vanish the moment anyone tries to pinpoint their source. Many who experience the whispers describe a sense of intimacy and unease. The sound seems to rise directly from the bog, passing through the wooden slats of the boardwalk and into the feet and hands of the listener. Hikers report the sudden feeling of being watched, a subtle shift in the air, or a prickling sensation along the skin. The voices carry a strange emotional weight, blending sorrow, confusion, and a lingering hint of anger. It is as if the spirits or the bog itself are aware of every footstep, every intrusion, and every glance at the still waters below. Some interpret the whispers as the voices of those who drowned in the peat, trapped between life and death, their souls unable to move on. Tales tell of hands reaching out from beneath the surface, of footsteps that vanish as soon as they are noticed, and of faces glimpsed briefly in the water's reflection before disappearing into the dark, murky depths. People who have spent hours photographing or observing the bog report catching fleeting shapes beneath the waterline, elongated shadows or dark forms that move in ways no fish or animal should. The visual encounters are rare but deeply disturbing, reinforcing the auditory phenomena and lending credibility to the local stories. Others suggest the bog itself is alive, a conscious presence that murmurs in response to those who traverse its fragile landscape. This interpretation portrays the bog as an ancient, unknowable entity, a living ecosystem imbued with intelligence and memory. The whispers, in this view, are not the remnants of human tragedy alone, but the voice of the land itself, a subtle warning to respect its treacherous waters, its hidden depths, and its delicate ecology. Those who have heard the whispers often describe a sense of being simultaneously small and exposed, acutely aware of the bog's power and the futility of trying to dominate or control it. The Orono Bog Boardwalk amplifies the effect. Elevated above the water, it places visitors directly in the path of the whispers, allowing the faint sounds to travel along the boards and into the footsteps of those walking. Some hikers have reported hearing whispers intensify as they pause to look into the water, only to vanish when they resume walking. Others claim that the echoes seem to follow them, moving beneath the boardwalk in ways that defy explanation. The combination of water, fog, and the elevated path creates a sensory experience that is difficult to separate from the natural world, blending sight, sound, and emotion into an immersive and unsettling encounter. Longtime locals advise caution when walking the boardwalk after dusk or in foggy conditions. The bog can be deceptively calm, with patches of unstable peat that shift underfoot, yet it is the unseen presence that generates the most fear. Stories persist of hikers who left abruptly after hearing the whispers, their hands trembling, their pace quickened, and a lasting impression that the bog had communicated directly with them. Even those who do not believe in spirits admit to a profound unease when crossing the still waters, a subtle acknowledgement that Orono Bog is different from any other forest or wetland in Maine. The legend continues to attract visitors seeking both natural beauty and eerie encounters. Researchers, birdwatchers, and photographers come for the landscape, but many leave with stories of the whispers and the strange, sometimes emotional impressions left by the bog. The phenomenon has become a part of the forest's identity, a reminder that the natural world can hold mysteries far older and stranger than any human mind can fully comprehend. The Orono Bog is no longer just a wetland. It is a living story, a repository of memory, grief, and possibly consciousness, conveyed in the soft, haunting murmur of water beneath the boardwalk. Ultimately, the whisper beneath the water serves as both a warning and an invitation. It reminds visitors to tread lightly, respect the fragile terrain, and consider the unseen forces that may inhabit it. To hear the whispers is to step into a space where time, history, and nature intertwine, where voices from the past may rise to speak through peat and water, and where the forest and bog retain secrets that cannot be ignored. Those who leave the boardwalk carry with them the sound in memory. The soft, bubbling whispers, echoing long after the water appears calm once again. A haunting presence that lingers at the edges of consciousness. Rangeley Lakes Forest, nestled in the heart of Maine's wilderness, is a sprawling expanse of dense woods, winding streams, and pristine lakes. The area has long been a haven for campers, anglers, and hikers seeking the solitude of nature. Its vast trails and secluded campsites offer a retreat from civilization. Yet, amid the natural beauty lies a dark history that has haunted the forest for decades. Locals speak in hushed tones of the drowned campers, a group who vanished mysteriously in the 1970s, leaving behind only abandoned tents and unanswered questions. The story begins on a stormy night when a group of 5 campers set out to enjoy the wilderness. Near one of the forest's remote lakes, the weather was unpredictable, with dark clouds gathering in the late afternoon and rain beginning to fall in sheets as evening approached. By nightfall, The forest was shrouded in darkness and mist, the rain hammering down on the trees, and the water lapping violently against the shore. When dawn arrived, their campsite was eerily silent. The tents stood upright, untouched, and all gear was perfectly dry, as if the storm had never reached that specific spot. There was no sign of struggle, no footprints leading away, and no indication of where the campers had gone. The disappearance baffled authorities and search teams, who scoured the forest and surrounding lakes for weeks. Over time, the case became a cautionary tale for locals. A story whispered to new hikers and campers about the forest's unpredictable and sometimes malevolent nature. Those who grew up near Rangeley Lake's forest learned to treat the area with respect, particularly after storms, when the natural world seemed to take on a more sinister quality. Visitors today report strange occurrences that some attribute to the lingering presence of the drowned campers. On stormy evenings, campers and hikers claim to hear voices carried across the lakes, echoing over the water, with an urgency that is impossible to ignore. These voices often shout warnings to leave, fragmented phrases that rise and fall with the wind, sometimes blending with the sound of rain and thunder. Hikers who have heard them describe a chilling clarity, as if the voices are not merely echoes, but conscious attempts to communicate, to prevent newcomers from suffering the same fate as the vanished group. The phenomenon is not limited to sound alone. Some witnesses report seeing faint, glowing shapes near the lakeshore or among the trees. Shapes that appear human but dissolve when approached. Others experience sudden chills, a dampness in the air that seems unnatural, or an overwhelming sense of being watched. Even seasoned outdoorsmen and wildlife photographers, familiar with the sounds and movements of the forest, find themselves unnerved by the combination of auditory and visual anomalies. The forest seems alive in a way that transcends ordinary nature, charged with a presence that is both protective and mournful. Locals offer several theories about what happened to the campers and why their voices continue to echo. Some believe that they were claimed by the forest itself, that a supernatural force tied to the lakes and wetlands reached out to them, pulling them into a realm just beyond human perception. Others suggest that the campers fell victim to a natural hazard, hidden bogs, treacherous currents, or sudden drops in terrain, that their spirits remained tethered to the site, unable to move on. In either interpretation, the forest and lakes are portrayed as sentient, aware of human intrusion, and unwilling to release the campers or their energy from that fateful night. Those who have camped in Rangeley Lake's forest often speak of the experience with a mixture of awe and fear. Even during calm weather, the memory of the drowned campers looms over the landscape. Hikers report an almost instinctual need to leave certain areas, particularly when approaching the lake after a storm, or when fog rolls in, obscuring visibility. The combination of quiet water, towering trees, and shifting shadows seems to amplify the sense of being watched, and the faint echo of voices across the water can turn even a peaceful morning into a moment of intense unease. The forest itself seems to preserve the memory of that night. Tents remain empty, trails remain overgrown in certain areas, and the lakes reflect not only the sky, but a sense of something hidden beneath the surface. Visitors often describe a surreal experience, where the boundary between the living and the vanished is blurred, and the natural world carries the weight of a long-forgotten tragedy. The drowned campers have become a silent warning, an invisible presence reminding all who enter the forest of the fragility of human life in the face of nature's power. Even decades later, the legend has a tangible effect. New campers are warned to stay close to the main trails, to avoid venturing too far from safe areas, and to treat the lakes with caution. Experienced hikers carry knowledge of the whispers, the echoes of voices, and the chills that accompany them. Some return year after year, seeking not danger but the thrill of the unknown, hoping for a glimpse or sound that connects them to the mystery. The stories, passed down from generation to generation, preserve the memory of those lost and instill a sense of reverence for the forest and its hidden perils. Ultimately, Rangeley Lake's forest is a place where beauty and terror coexist. The drowned campers serve as both a cautionary tale and a haunting presence, reminding all who enter that the wilderness is not simply a backdrop for adventure, but a living, reactive environment with secrets of its own. To hear the voices echoing across the water, to sense the unseen presence, is to confront the weight of history, tragedy, and the enduring mysteries of the forest. Even as the wind ripples across the lakes and the sun sets behind the towering pines, the memory of the vanished campers lingers, calling silently, or sometimes not so silently, through the forest, urging all who wander there to leave before it is too late. Sebago Lake State Park, located in southern Maine, is a landscape of striking natural beauty, known for its expansive waters, wooded shores, and tranquil vistas. In the summer months, the lake hums with lifeboaters skim across the surface. Campers gather along its sandy beaches, and fishermen cast their lines into the clear, cold water. But when winter arrives, Sebago Lake transforms into a frozen expanse, a vast sheet of ice that stretches across miles, glinting under the pale sunlight and reflecting the skeletal silhouettes of surrounding pines. Beneath this frozen surface, according to locals and longtime visitors, something unnerving stirs. The Ice Whisperers. The legend of the Ice Whisperers has been told for generations. In the deepest months of winter, when the lake freezes solid and snow muffles the surrounding woods, fishermen and ice skaters have reported hearing strange voices emanating from below the ice. These are not the ordinary sounds of cracking ice or the wind whistling across the frozen surface. The voices are soft, rhythmic, and inhuman, rising and falling in patterns that almost resemble speech, yet are impossible to understand. Some describe them as murmurs, others as chanting, and a few claim to have heard a low, almost musical resonance that seemed to pulse beneath the ice. Stories vary, but the most unsettling encounters involve fishermen who ventured onto the frozen lake alone. One man, experienced and confident, set up his ice shack far from the shore on a particularly cold January morning. As he drilled his hole through the ice, he reported feeling an unnatural chill rising from the water below, a sensation that seemed to reach through the floor of his shack and into his bones. Then he heard a soft, steady whisper that seemed to come from every direction at once. At first he assumed it was the wind or the ice settling, but as the whispers continued, he noticed something more disturbing. Faces, pale and distorted, pressed against the underside of the ice, mouths open in silent cries. The man abandoned his fishing and fled the lake immediately. He never returned, and even mentioning the experience left him visibly shaken. Other witnesses recount hearing disembodied voices that rise from the ice at night, often just before or after a snowstorm. Campers in cabins along the shore report a low, melodic hum that seems to move beneath the frozen lake, rising and falling as if something or someone is moving beneath the ice sheet. Those who have tried to approach the source often feel disoriented, as if the frozen surface itself resists their efforts. The whispers have a hypnotic quality, compelling listeners to linger near the edge, even as a deep, instinctive fear warns them to retreat. Local folklore provides a variety of explanations for the ice whisperer. Some believe that the lake has absorbed the spirits of those who drowned in its waters over the centuries. Their voices trapped beneath the ice and released only under certain conditions. Accidents have long been a part of Sebago's history, with fishermen, skaters, and boaters sometimes lost to sudden storms or thin ice. The whispers are thought to be echoes of these tragedies, a permanent reminder of the lake's unforgiving nature and the lives claimed by its cold depths. Others propose a more supernatural explanation. Some suggest that the lake itself is sentient, a living entity that communicates through the frozen barrier, using sound and vibration to interact with those above. In this interpretation, the whispers are not cries for help, but warnings, urging those who venture onto the ice to leave before disaster strikes. Those attuned to the phenomenon report that the rhythm of the whispers changes depending on proximity to danger, faster and more insistent near weak ice or submerged hazards, slower and more melodic in safer areas. The effect is both eerie and mesmerizing, creating an experience that blurs the line between the natural and the supernatural. Researchers and skeptics have attempted to rationalize the phenomenon. Some attribute the sounds to natural vibrations traveling through the ice, amplified by wind and temperature fluctuations. Others point to air pockets and trapped gases under the surface, which can produce strange harmonic tones. While these explanations account for some of the auditory effects, they fall short when confronted with consistent eyewitness reports of faces beneath the ice and the hypnotic quality of the voices. For those who have encountered the ice whisperers firsthand, the experience is not easily dismissed, leaving a lasting impression of something beyond explanation. The lake's frozen expanse also plays a role in the psychological impact of the phenomenon. Even experienced outdoorsmen report a sudden awareness of their own fragility, a realization that the frozen surface could give way at any moment. In this environment, the whispers seem amplified, a reminder that the lake has a memory, and that those who venture too far alone may not return. Visitors who wish to experience Sebago Lake in winter are advised to remain cautious, travel in groups, and respect the warnings carried in local lore. The ice whisperers are a presence both subtle and overwhelming, their voices rising through the ice to remind the living of the power of nature and the lingering memory of the lost. Even after leaving the frozen lake behind, many report a persistent echo in their minds, the faint sound of whispers, rhythmic and inhuman, that seems to travel far beyond Sebago's frozen shores. Ultimately, Sebago Lake State Park is a place of stark contrasts, serene and treacherous, beautiful and haunting. The ice whisperers serve as a chilling reminder that beneath the frozen surface lies a world that defies understanding, a realm where tragedy and mystery intertwine, and where the voices of the lost may rise at any moment to remind visitors of the lake's enduring secrets. To hear them is to glimpse the depths of the unknown and feel the cold, rhythmic pulse of something that refuses to remain silent. Allagash Wilderness, stretching across northern Maine, is an expanse of dense forest, winding rivers, and remote lakes. Its isolation has made it a haven for outdoor enthusiasts seeking solitude, but it has also become the epicenter of one of the most enduring and mysterious legends in the state. Long celebrated for its untouched beauty, the Allagash Woods are equally infamous for strange lights, unexplainable sounds, and accounts of otherworldly encounters. Locals speak of the phenomenon as the light above, a presence that has fascinated and terrified visitors for decades. The most well-known story began in 1976, when 4 men ventured into the Allagash Wilderness on a hunting and fishing trip. According to their accounts, they experienced a series of events that defied explanation. While canoeing along a remote stretch of the river under the cover of darkness, the men reported seeing a strange, pulsating blue light weaving between the trees. The light moved with an intelligence of its own, shifting from branch to branch, hovering just above the ground, and sometimes disappearing entirely before reappearing moments later. The men described feeling an intense pressure in the air, a humming vibration that seemed to resonate through their bodies, making it difficult to speak or move. Then came the abduction. Each of the men reported a period of missing time. Though none could account for the hours that had passed, they described being lifted off the ground, surrounded by the blue light, and feeling as though their minds were separated from their bodies. When they returned to consciousness, they were back on the riverbank, disoriented and shaken, with no memory of how they had arrived there. The incident became a source of local fascination, sparking theories of extraterrestrial contact and paranormal activity. Skeptics dismissed the story, citing misperception and stress. But the men's consistency and detailed recollection lent an undeniable weight to the legend. Today, campers and hikers in the Allagash Wilderness often report similar phenomena. Blue lights, described as both small and large, move silently through the trees, sometimes darting quickly, other times hovering in one spot for several minutes. Observers frequently note that the lights seem to follow them, appearing at a distance and then advancing closer, as though aware of human presence. Some witnesses have attempted to capture photographs or video, only to find that the images failed to register the lights accurately, reinforcing the sense that these manifestations are not merely optical illusions, but something far more elusive. In addition to the lights, people report auditory phenomena. Radios, even when tuned to no station or static, occasionally transmit voices that do not resemble any known language. The sounds are rhythmic, tonal, and eerily structured, often coinciding with the appearance of the blue lights. Campers recount sudden bursts of unintelligible chatter, followed by long stretches of silence, as if the forest itself is alive with communication from another dimension. Some hikers claim to hear low humming or vibrations through the ground, a resonance that intensifies when the lights are near. The forest's isolation amplifies the strangeness of these encounters. Without the interference of urban noise or artificial light, the Allagash Woods become an environment where perception is heightened and the unknown feels ever present. The dense trees, winding rivers, and shadowed undergrowth create an atmosphere of both beauty and unease. Even experienced outdoorsmen report an instinctive fear when the lights appear, a sense that the wilderness has shifted from a familiar, tranquil space to a place governed by unfamiliar laws. The combination of visual and auditory phenomena creates a sensory experience that is immersive and unsettling, leaving witnesses questioning what is real and what belongs to the imagination. Local lore adds further weight to the mystery. Some suggest that the blue lights are the remnants of extraterrestrial exploration, evidence of contact with beings from another world. Others believe they are spiritual in nature, tied to the ancient energy of the forest itself, a conduit for forces beyond human understanding. The rivers and lakes, some say, act as mirrors or gateways, reflecting and amplifying the energy that pervades the woods. Whatever the cause, the phenomenon has persisted for decades, leaving a trail of stories and unexplained encounters that continue to intrigue scientists, skeptics, and adventurers alike. The Allagash Wilderness has also earned a reputation for inducing inexplicable disorientation. Visitors who follow the lights often find that familiar trails seem to shift, landmarks appear in new places, and distances are difficult to judge. Compasses and electronic devices occasionally malfunction, adding to the disorienting experience. Witnesses describe an uncanny sense of being observed, as though the forest itself is aware of their movements and intentions. Some hikers have left the area abruptly, reporting an overwhelming pressure or dread that accompanies the lights, while others stay in awe, documenting what they can and sharing the stories with those who will listen. The phenomenon of the light above is not limited to a single season. Sightings occur in winter when snow reflects the glow, in summer under the canopy of green, and in the long twilight of autumn. Though most encounters are brief, lasting minutes rather than hours, they leave a lasting impression on those who witness them. People report lingering sensations of cold, tingling energy, and the unmistakable feeling that they have glimpsed something beyond human comprehension. Ultimately, the Allagash Wilderness serves as both a sanctuary and a mystery. The light above embodies the intersection of natural beauty and the unexplained, blending history, legend, and first-hand experience into a narrative that captivates all who venture into the woods. Whether viewed as a tale of extraterrestrial visitation, a spiritual phenomenon, or a quirk of perception in an isolated environment, the blue lights and strange voices continue to inspire curiosity, awe, and caution. Those who hear the voices or witness the lights are reminded that the wilderness holds secrets that cannot be fully understood, and that the forest's energy silent, luminous, and alive persists long after visitors have left its shadowed paths. Kingfield Woods, nestled in the rugged hills of western Maine, is a dense forest of towering pines, hemlocks, and birch, blanketed in snow during the harsh winters. By day, the woods appear serene, the sunlight glinting off frost-covered branches and frozen streams, drawing hikers, cross-country skiers, and wildlife enthusiasts alike. Yet beneath this picturesque surface lies a dark history, one rooted in tragedy and memory. For over a century, travelers in Kingfield Woods have reported encounters with a spectral figure known as the Crying Soldier, a young man whose death during the Civil War left a lingering presence in the forest. The story begins in the winter of 1864, when a young soldier, weary from battle and burdened by fear, attempted to desert his post. He fled through the snow-laden woods, hoping to escape the horrors of war, but the relentless cold and deep drifts of snow overtook him. Exhausted and alone, He collapsed in a remote clearing, never to rise again. According to legend, his final words were a plea, whispered into the wind. "Don't leave me behind." Soldiers, comrades, and local villagers reported finding his uniform partially buried in the snow days later, though his body was never fully recovered. Since that winter, travelers in Kingfield Woods have recounted hearing a voice carried on the wind, often on cold nights or during snowstorms. The voice is unmistakable, haunting, plaintive, and repetitive. It cries out, "Don't leave me behind," echoing through the stillness of the trees with a chilling clarity. Hikers and skiers report that the sound often seems to come from directly behind them, prompting an instinctive glance over the shoulder. When they do, they claim to see a lone figure, dressed in the faded blue of a Civil War uniform, kneeling in the snow. His eyes are hollow, empty sockets that convey a profound sorrow and desperation, a gaze that seems to pierce the soul of anyone who meets it. The appearances are fleeting. Moments later, the figure vanishes, leaving only a trail of footprints pressed into the snow. Witnesses often describe the footprints as partially melting, as though the ghostly presence interacts with the physical world, but cannot remain fully corporeal. Some hikers have followed the trail briefly, only to find it disappearing into the forest floor, fading like mist under the sun. These encounters leave a lasting impression, a mixture of awe, fear, and empathy for the young soldier condemned to wander the woods eternally. Several patterns emerge from these sightings. The crying soldier often appears during winter storms, when visibility is low and the wind carries sound across the frozen landscape. His voice seems to resonate more strongly when travelers are alone or isolated, creating a sense of vulnerability and exposure. Yet the phenomenon is not entirely malevolent. Many who have encountered him report a strange compulsion to pause, to acknowledge his presence, and even to speak gently in response. Those who do so claim that the crying softens, that the hollow eyes seem momentarily less haunted, as if gratitude passes between the living and the spectral soldier. The legend of the crying soldier is reinforced by the forest's environment. Kingfield Woods is thick, with trees closely packed together, their branches heavy with snow in winter. The terrain is uneven, with hidden ravines and frozen streams, creating a labyrinthine quality that magnifies the isolation of anyone passing through. Snow dampens ordinary sounds, yet somehow amplifies the soldier's cry, carrying it farther than natural acoustics should allow. Those unfamiliar with the area often report a growing sense of disorientation, as though the forest itself has shifted to accommodate the presence of the ghost. Local folklore offers multiple interpretations of the phenomenon. Some believe the soldier's spirit is bound to the place of his death, trapped by the fear and regret of desertion. Others suggest that he serves as a warning, a reminder of the costs of fear, isolation, and hasty decisions in life and death situations. A few propose that his appearances are a manifestation of the collective memory of the war itself. The forest, preserving the anguish and sacrifice of countless young men whose lives were cut short by conflict. Whatever the explanation, the crying soldier has become a permanent fixture in the cultural consciousness of Kingfield Woods. Encounters with the ghost are often transformative. Hikers, campers, and skiers who witness the soldier's apparition describe a heightened awareness of the passage of time, of the fragility of human life, and of the lingering presence of history. Many leave the woods with a quiet respect for the forest, a sense that its beauty is intertwined with stories too heavy to forget. Those who record their experiences in journals or local archives speak of the soldier with reverence, acknowledging the sorrow and longing that permeate his spectral existence. Over the years, the crying soldier has become both a cautionary tale and a point of fascination. Visitors are advised to remain aware of the forest's conditions, to respect its isolation, and to prepare adequately for winter excursions. At the same time, the legend invites curiosity, a chance to encounter a figure from the past whose presence is both tragic and compelling. Witnesses often recount the same key elements: the hollow eyes, the pleading voice, the fleeting footprints, and the overwhelming sense of a life interrupted too soon. Kingfield Woods, with its snow-laden branches and frozen streams, stands as a living monument to the past. The crying soldier embodies the intersection of history and legend, memory and mystery. To hear his voice in the wind, to glimpse his kneeling form in the snow, is to step momentarily into a time long gone, to feel the weight of fear, loss, and longing that continues to echo through the forest. His presence reminds all who enter that, even in the quietest, most beautiful landscapes, the past can rise again, calling out through time, pleading not to be forgotten, and leaving a haunting trace in the snow that melts, yet never fully disappears. Camden Hills Forest, overlooking the sparkling waters of Penobscot Bay in Maine, is known for its rugged beauty, towering pines, and winding trails that draw hikers and nature lovers from near and far. The forest's cliffs rise dramatically from the shoreline, offering breathtaking vistas of the bay, islands, and distant mountains. Yet amid this natural splendor lies a dark and haunting presence known as the Wailing Cliff, a place where tragedy and memory have fused with the land itself, leaving a mark that resonates even to this day. The legend of the Wailing Cliff dates back more than a century, to a time when young lovers would meet in secret, drawn to the cliff's dramatic overlook and the isolation of the surrounding woods. According to local lore, several couples, overcome by despair or bound by forbidden romance, chose the cliff as the final stage for their tragic farewells. Their leaps were often impulsive, made in moments of heartbreak or desperation, leaving only sorrow and unanswered questions behind. Over time, the cliff acquired a reputation as a place of mourning, where the air itself seemed to carry the weight of lost lives. Visitors today speak of an unsettling presence that lingers near the edge of the cliff, especially on foggy nights. Hikers have reported hearing a woman's scream echoing across the rocks and into the forest below. It is a sharp, piercing sound, full of anguish and loss, reverberating in a way that no ordinary cry could. Those who hear it often describe a visceral reaction, a chill crawling along the spine, a tightening in the chest, and an urgent need to retreat from the cliff's edge. The scream is said to rise without warning, sometimes distant and faint, other times close enough to feel as though it surrounds the listener. The forest surrounding the cliff amplifies the eerie experience. Trees twist unnaturally toward the sea, their gnarled branches bending as if in an eternal attempt to pull something back from the void. Walkers along the trails have noted that the trees seem to lean toward the cliff's edge more prominently in areas closest to the alleged cries. The air feels heavier here, dense and charged with a presence that defies explanation. Many describe a sensation of being watched, an invisible weight pressing on their shoulders, or a subtle tugging at the feet, as if the forest itself mourns the lives lost and wishes to reclaim what was taken. Several hikers have recounted encounters that border on the surreal. Some claim to see fleeting figures near the cliff shapes that appear human at first glance but vanish when approached. Others hear whispering among the twisted trees, voices fragmented and barely intelligible, blending grief and longing in a way that feels deeply human, yet distinctly otherworldly. On fog-laden mornings, travelers report that the fog thickens unnaturally near the cliff, obscuring paths and making familiar trails difficult to navigate, creating an almost hypnotic atmosphere where the boundaries between past and present blur. Local folklore attributes the wailing to the spirits of the lovers themselves, eternally tethered to the place where their lives ended. Some believe the woman's scream is a perpetual warning, a lament for those who dare to venture too close to the edge. Others suggest the cries are residual energy, echoes of raw emotion imprinted on the land, repeating endlessly whenever the conditions fog still air and isolation align perfectly. Even skeptics acknowledge the intensity of the phenomenon, admitting that there is an unshakable sense of sorrow and presence that permeates the area. Regardless of rational explanation, the Wailing Cliff has influenced not only local legend, but also behavior in the forest. Experienced hikers often advise newcomers to approach the cliff with caution, particularly during early morning fog or late afternoon shadows, when the sense of isolation is strongest. Many avoid the area entirely after hearing accounts of screams or witnessing the unnatural lean of the trees. For those who do venture close, the forest seems to exact a psychological toll. Unease, vertigo, and the disorienting sense that the world itself has shifted, if only momentarily. Despite or perhaps because of the haunting, the cliff continues to draw visitors. Some come seeking the thrill of the supernatural, hoping to witness the legendary scream or glimpse the spectral figures among the trees. Others approach with reverence, leaving small tokens or flowers in honor of those who died. Photographers and nature enthusiasts speak of the strange quality of light near the cliff, with fog and sun interacting in ways that make the scenery appear ethereal, almost unreal, reinforcing the idea that this is a place where the natural and supernatural coexist. Even when the forest is quiet, the memory of tragedy hangs over the wailing cliff. The twisted trees, the heavy air, and the unseen presence combine to create an atmosphere that is palpable. A lingering sense of grief and longing that reaches across generations. Visitors often leave with a profound awareness of the lives lost here, the emotions left behind, and the enduring imprint of human sorrow on the landscape. The cliff, while breathtaking in beauty, remains a solemn reminder that some locations carry the weight of history in ways that cannot be ignored. Ultimately, Camden Hills Forest and the Wailing Cliff stand as a testament to the persistence of memory, emotion, and legend. The screams that echo across the cliffs are not just sounds, they are reminders of love, despair, and the fragile boundary between life and death. To hear the wail, to feel the pull of the twisted trees, and to sense the heavy air is to step into a story that has played out countless times, leaving an indelible mark on the land and the imagination. The forest mourns, the cliff remembers, and the voices of the past continue to echo for all who dare to listen. A haunting chorus, blending with the winds over Penobscot Bay. Parsons Field Woods, located in southern Maine, is a dense and shadowed forest of oak, pine, and maple, crisscrossed by trails that have existed for centuries. Amid the thick undergrowth and moss-covered stones lies a winding path shrouded in legend and fear, known simply as the Witch's Path, but whose presence, according to local lore, continues to haunt the forest to this day. The story begins in a small colonial settlement near the edge of the woods. The woman, whose name has been lost to time, was accused of practicing witchcraft, of meddling with dark forces that threatened the community. She was said to possess knowledge of herbs and healing, skills that were misunderstood and feared by those who could not comprehend them. One harsh winter, the accusations escalated, fueled by superstition and paranoia. The townspeople forced her along the path that would later bear her spectral presence, carrying her to the site of execution. She disappeared from the mortal world there, yet legend holds that her spirit never left the forest. Those who enter Parsons Field Woods today often report a sense of unease as soon as they step onto the Witch's Path. The air grows heavier, colder, and the forest itself seems to close in, as if warning intruders to turn back. Hikers and explorers describe an unnatural silence. Birds fall silent, squirrels vanish, and even the wind seems to pause as though listening. Animals instinctively avoid the path, leaving footprints of deer and raccoons abruptly halting near its edge, as if aware of a presence humans cannot see. Visitors also report strange interactions with technology. Cameras, GPS devices, and cell phones often fail upon entering the path. Screens flicker, batteries drain inexplicably, and electronic signals vanish, isolating travelers in the forest. Some interpret these failures as a warning or a sign that the spirit of the accused which does not want her domain disturbed. Others suggest the path itself is infused with residual energy from her death, a force that disrupts modern tools and heightens human perception. The most chilling accounts involve sightings of a shadow moving just ahead of the walker. The shadow is long and thin, humanoid in shape, gliding along the path, but always just out of reach. Observers report a deep, instinctual unease when they see it, a feeling that they are being followed, yet can never catch up. Attempts to pursue the figure often lead travelers deeper into the forest, where the trail becomes more labyrinthian and disorienting. Those who chase the shadow frequently find themselves retracing steps unknowingly, returning to the same spot they started, as though the forest itself is guiding them in circles. Sounds along the Witch's Path are equally unnerving. Some visitors hear soft whispers carried on the wind, indistinct and fleeting, almost forming words that promise warnings or secrets. Others describe the rustling of long skirts across the leaves or the faint clinking of chains, as if echoing the footsteps of those who walked the path centuries ago. Even when the forest is calm, the atmosphere is charged, heavy with the sense of a presence that is both vigilant and mournful. The psychological effect of the path is profound. Many who spend time walking it describe a growing sense of dread, a pressure on their chest, and a persistent feeling of being watched. Even seasoned hikers and outdoor enthusiasts acknowledge the unnerving sensation that the forest is alive in a way beyond natural understanding. The shadow, the silence, and the inexplicable failures of technology combine to create an environment that feels almost otherworldly, a place where the boundaries between the living and the dead seem porous. Local folklore offers multiple interpretations. Some believe the shadow is the spirit of the accused woman herself, walking eternally along the path she was forced to tread in her final moments. Others suggest that the figure is a guardian of the forest, a spectral presence ensuring that her story is not forgotten and that the path remains undisturbed. Some scholars of the supernatural argue that the path has become a focal point of energy, an intersection between the mortal realm and another plane, explaining the technological interference and heightened sensations reported by witnesses. Despite its reputation, the Witch's Path continues to draw visitors. Paranormal enthusiasts, historians, and hikers alike come seeking to witness the legend firsthand. While some approach with curiosity and excitement, others tread carefully, respecting the path's dark history. Many leave the forest with a sense of awe and lingering unease, the image of the long, thin shadow etched in their minds. Those who attempt to photograph or record the shadow often find their efforts fail, reinforcing the notion that the figure exists beyond ordinary perception. The forest itself seems to honor the legend. Moss and roots create a natural corridor along the path, guiding travelers as though aware of their presence. Light filters unevenly through the canopy, creating shifting shadows that play tricks on the eyes, blending with the spirit's own elusive form. Trees bend subtly toward the trail, their branches forming near impenetrable arcs, enhancing the feeling of enclosure and watchfulness. The path is at once beautiful and oppressive, a place where history and legend coexist, shaping every step taken along its winding route. Ultimately, Parsonsfield Woods and the Witch's Path are a testament to the enduring power of memory, fear, and legend. The shadow that glides ahead, the whispering winds, and the uncanny interference with technology serve as reminders that some events leave a permanent imprint on the world, visible to those sensitive enough to perceive it. Walking the path is to encounter the echo of history, a lingering spirit, and a forest that refuses to forget. For anyone who steps onto the Witch's Path, the experience is unforgettable, a chilling reminder that the past never truly dies, and that some shadows follow silently, always just ahead. Machias Forest, sprawling across Washington County in Maine, is a dense expanse of spruce, pine, and fir that stretches toward the coast. Its thick undergrowth, winding streams, and remote clearings make it a haven for fishermen, hunters, and campers seeking solitude far from the bustle of modern life. Yet among the natural beauty of the forest, an unusual phenomenon has captured the attention of locals for generations. The phantom campfire, deep within the forest, witnesses report seeing the warm glow of a fire burning in a clearing, but upon approach, it vanishes without a trace, leaving only lingering smoke and the eerie sense of someone or something having been there. The first recorded reports of the phantom campfire date back to the early 1900s, though local legends suggest the phenomenon stretches even further into history. Fishermen and woodsmen tell tales of coming upon the fire late at night, its flames dancing with a brightness that seems almost unnatural against the darkness of the trees. The fire is often described as small, but intensely warm, crackling and shifting in a way that draws observers in, compelling them to move closer. Yet, invariably, by the time anyone reaches the clearing, the fire has extinguished, leaving behind only faint wisps of smoke that curl lazily into the night sky. Accompanying the mysterious fire are sounds that deepen its haunting reputation. Witnesses report hearing faint singing, sometimes soft enough to be mistaken for the wind rustling through branches. Other times clear enough to recognize as sea shanties from another century. The songs speak of sailors, voyages, and longing for home, echoing across the forest in a way that seems to belong to another time. Many describe the melodies as melancholic yet strangely soothing, as if the voices are simultaneously welcoming and warning. The singing often fades as one approaches the source, leaving an uncanny silence in its wake. Footprints are another inexplicable element of the legend. Those who discover the phantom campfire often notice footprints circling the clearing, pressed firmly into the earth, as if the previous occupants walked in a deliberate pattern. Yet these tracks lead nowhere, disappearing abruptly into the undergrowth, frozen midst. In some cases, the prints appear too large or too small to belong to any single person, further suggesting that the phenomenon is not entirely of this world. Attempts to trace the source or follow the tracks inevitably fail, reinforcing the notion that the fire is a spectral manifestation, unbound by the rules of reality. The experience of encountering the phantom campfire is often intense and unforgettable. Witnesses describe an immediate shift in atmosphere as they enter the clearing. The air grows warmer. The scent of burning wood fills their nostrils, and the forest seems to hold its breath. Shadows stretch unnaturally in the glow, and the surrounding trees appear to lean inward, as if drawn to the flame. Many report a feeling of being watched, though no figures are ever visible. The combination of fire, music, and forest energy creates a surreal, almost hypnotic environment, blurring the lines between natural and supernatural perception. Local fishermen, who spend long nights along the rivers and streams, are among the most frequent witnesses. They describe the phantom campfire as a guide or a lure, appearing near familiar trails, but always just beyond reach. Some speculate that the phenomenon is tied to the spirits of sailors who perished at sea, their energy drifting inland, manifesting as fire to warn or beckon those who pass through the forest. Others suggest it is the residual energy of early settlers or loggers, their campfires imprinted on the land, replaying moments of warmth, camaraderie, and survival over and over again. The forest's isolation amplifies the strangeness of the experience. Machias Forest is sparsely trafficked, with narrow trails and dense undergrowth, making navigation difficult at night. When the fire appears, it often illuminates the surrounding trees and terrain in a way that makes the familiar seem strange. Shadows shift and lengthen unpredictably, and familiar sounds, the rush of a nearby stream, the wind and the pine stake on an almost sentient quality. Hikers and campers report a heightened sense of awareness, a mix of fear, curiosity, and awe that lingers long after the encounter ends. Despite the eerie nature of the phenomenon, the phantom campfire has also become a source of fascination and folklore. Stories are shared among locals and visitors alike, passed down in taverns, at fishing docks, and around real campfires. Some daring visitors attempt to approach it deliberately, seeking proof of the legend, while others are content to observe from a distance, respecting the forest's mysterious energy. Regardless of approach, the experience is transformative, leaving witnesses with a profound awareness of the forest's history, its unseen inhabitants, and the enduring power of legend. Photographs and video of the fire are notoriously unreliable. Cameras often fail to capture the flame properly, producing only faint glows or blurred images, while audio recordings struggle to reproduce the shanties with clarity. This has led some to speculate that the phantom campfire exists partly in perception, a combination of residual energy, suggestion, and heightened senses in the deep woods. Yet countless independent accounts suggest that whether witnessed in full or glimpsed fleetingly, the phenomenon leaves a tangible impression: smell, warmth, and the lingering feeling of another presence. Ultimately, Machias Forest and the phantom campfire represent the intersection of nature, history, and the unexplained. The glowing fire, the circling footprints, and the distant shanties are reminders that some places carry echoes of the past, replaying moments of human experience across generations. Whether considered a ghostly visitation, a supernatural manifestation, or a quirk of perception in a remote and magical environment, the phantom campfire endures as one of Maine's most compelling and haunting legends. Visitors leave the forest with memories of warmth and wonder, tinged with unease, and an unforgettable sense that the woods are alive with stories that refuse to die. Mount Blue State Park in Maine is a sprawling expanse of forest, mountains, and lakes, a destination beloved by hikers, campers, and families seeking an escape into nature. The park's dense pine groves and winding trails provide a sense of seclusion, and the serene waters of Webb Lake shimmer in the sunlight, inviting boating, swimming, and quiet reflection. Yet beneath this tranquil exterior, an unsettling phenomenon has earned the park a chilling reputation. Campers speak in hushed tones of the children in the pines, a mysterious presence that appears to haunt the park after dark, leaving traces both tangible and terrifying. The legend begins with reports from families camping along the lake and deep within the pine forests. Early in the morning, some have woken to find small handprints pressed against car windows. The prints are damp, as if coated with water from the lake, yet the handprints show no clear owner. They are too small to belong to an adult, and their placement suggests that they were made by someone or something that moved silently around the campsite during the night. These marks appear suddenly and disappear just as inexplicably, leaving families confused and unnerved. Alongside the handprints comes the sound of children's laughter drifting through the trees. Campers report hearing playful giggles, sometimes echoing across the lake or weaving through the tall pines. Those who step outside to investigate often see fleeting shadows moving between the tree trunks, darting quickly and disappearing before they can be fully identified. Some campers have attempted to follow the sounds, drawn by curiosity or concern. One widely recounted incident involves a lone camper who heard persistent laughter calling from deep within the forest. Ignoring warnings and following the echoes, they vanished without a trace. Search parties found no footprints, no torn foliage, and no signs of struggle, only the lingering sound of faint giggles that seemed to recede with each step taken toward them. This incident has become a cautionary tale for park visitors. The children in the pines are not to be chased or confronted. Many who witness these phenomena describe an eerie interplay between the natural and supernatural. The forest itself seems to respond to the presence of the children. Air grows inexplicably colder along the trails where the laughter is heard, and the wind carries the faint scent of damp earth and lake water. Even far from the shoreline, animals avoid these areas, leaving quiet clearings where the playful yet haunting presence seems strongest. Campers report the sense of being observed, not by an individual, but by a collective awareness, watching that feels both innocent and ominous. Psychologists and folklorists have attempted to explain the legend in various ways. Some suggest that the handprints and sounds are the result of the human mind projecting fears and stories onto the forest, influenced by its isolation and natural acoustics. Others argue that the phenomenon is a form of residual energy, echoes of children who may have drowned or vanished near the lakes and streams decades ago, replaying moments of play or distress in a loop tied to the land. While rational explanations abound, none fully account for the consistency of reports or the tangible evidence of handprints and wet footprints. The park's environment amplifies the experience. Mount Blue's pines are tall and densely packed, their trunks forming vertical walls that obscure vision and carry sound unusually well. Shadows shift constantly in the fading light, and trails twist and fork, often leaving travelers disoriented. In this setting, a small sound can become magnified, and a fleeting shadow can suggest a presence just out of reach. Many who encounter the children report a combination of awe, fear, and sympathy, sensing that the forest holds a memory it cannot release, a story tied to young lives lost or trapped in its depths. Despite the chilling encounters, Mount Blue State Park remains a popular destination. Campers, hikers, and adventurers are drawn to its beauty and its legends alike. Visitors often recount their experiences around the campfire, sharing stories of laughter in the trees, the sudden appearance of wet handprints, and the fleeting shadows that dart among the pines. Some leave offerings near the trailhead, small toys or coins bowl, weaving it might appease or honor the spirits that roam the forest. Others simply tread carefully, respecting the unseen presence, and returning to their campsites with a quiet sense of reverence and caution. The phenomenon also serves as a reminder of the forest's timelessness. The laughter, handprints, and shadows connect the present to a past that remains alive in ways that cannot be explained. Families who encounter the children in the pines leave with memories that linger, an awareness of the thin veil between the ordinary and the inexplicable. The forest, with its serene lakes and towering trees, is transformed at night into a place of both wonder and unease, where playful spirits and lingering sorrow intertwine. Ultimately, the legend of the children in the pines is a testament to the enduring power of place and memory. The handprints pressed against car windows, the laughter echoing among the trees, and the shadows flitting just beyond view create an experience that is at once tangible and elusive. Mount Blue State Park holds these mysteries in its depths, inviting visitors to witness the remnants of lives that may never have fully left the world, and to recognize that in some corners of the forest, the past continues to play, calling out with voices that are both joyful and haunting, leaving a lasting impression on anyone who dares to enter. Deer Isle Forest, perched along Maine's rugged coast, is a landscape of dense woods, rocky outcrops, and winding trails that lead toward the Atlantic's ever-changing tides. The forest is known for its thick fogs that roll in from the sea, blanketing the trees in a ghostly haze, and its isolation, which lends a sense of timelessness to those who wander within. Among the locals' whispers tell of a mysterious presence known as the drifting figure, a spectral entity said to glide silently through the forest, its feet never touching the ground, visible only under the right conditions of fog and stillness. The earliest accounts date back decades, passed down in hushed tones by lobstermen, hikers, and longtime residents of Deer Isle. They speak of a figure in gray, tall and thin, appearing at the edge of fog-draped clearings or weaving between the trees. Its movements are unnaturally smooth, almost floating, and it vanishes as soon as human voices break the silence. Locals caution that the figure is not malevolent in the traditional sense, but its presence carries an intense, unsettling energy, leaving witnesses both fascinated and terrified. The figure seems to favor the early morning hours, when fog clings to the forest floor and sunlight struggles to pierce the canopy. Those who have seen it describe an almost cinematic scene, the gray apparition emerging from the mist, limbs elongated, motion fluid yet deliberate, hovering above the ground as if unbound by the laws of gravity. It drifts closer to observers with a slow, inexorable grace, stopping only when someone speaks, calls a name, or moves abruptly. At that moment, it dissolves into the fog, leaving behind the eerie silence of the forest. One of the most notable encounters occurred in 2009, when a woman hiking the trails managed to capture a photograph of the figure. She described it as a translucent shape, gray and blurred, with long limbs stretching unnaturally. In the image, the figure seems to float several inches above the forest floor, its form partially blending with the mist. When she showed it to friends, some dismissed it as a trick of light and fog, while others felt a shiver at the figure's unmistakable humanoid shape. The woman later deleted the photograph after claiming the figure began appearing in her dreams, walking silently through misted woods, observing her, and vanishing at the edges of vision. The dreams she described were vivid and disorienting, blending memory and fantasy in a way that made sleep uneasy. In them, she felt watched but not threatened, as though the drifting figure existed outside human concepts of intention. The entity's presence was always silent, yet profoundly tangible, accompanied by the faint scent of damp earth and pine. This led her to believe that the figure had somehow attached itself to her perception, not out of malice, but as a witness to human life intruding into its domain. Others in Deer Isle report similarly chilling experiences. Hikers walking the forest alone speak of glimpses from the corner of the eye, a shadowy gray form gliding behind trees, only to vanish when confronted directly. Some say they feel an inexplicable pull, a tug at the consciousness, as if the figure is trying to draw attention to something unseen or forgotten. Footsteps are rarely heard, but there is a sense of movement in the undergrowth, a disturbance of air and foliage that hints at a presence far more substantial than a simple shadow. The forest itself seems to amplify the figure's mystique. The thick fog, uneven terrain, and dense canopy create conditions that distort light and sound, making familiar trails seem alien. Trees appear to lean toward the path as the figure passes, their branches forming shifting corridors of shadow. Even the forest sounds the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a bird, the trickle of stream stake on an otherworldly resonance, blending with the sense of hovering presence. Witnesses often describe the air as heavier, charged with a tension that is tangible but undefinable, as though the forest itself acknowledges the drifting figure's passage. Skeptics argue that the sightings are the product of fog, fatigue, and imagination, a combination of natural atmospheric effects and human expectation. Yet the consistency of reports, spanning decades and multiple observers, suggests that something unusual occurs here. The figure's behavior is vanishing at human sounds. Its ethereal, gliding motion, and its occasional visibility in photographs defies simple explanation. Even locals, who have spent a lifetime in the forest, describe it as unlike anything they have encountered elsewhere. A presence that is simultaneously captivating and profoundly disquieting. The drifting figure has become a part of Deer Isle's folklore, discussed quietly among residents and intrigued visitors. While some approach the forest seeking a sighting, others prefer to tread carefully, respecting the entity and the isolation of its domain. Many leave tokens or notes along the trails in acknowledgement, though no one claims these actions summon or appease the figure. It appears and disappears entirely at its own will, governed by conditions known only to itself. Ultimately, Deer Isle Forest and the drifting figure serve as a reminder of the unseen layers of the world around us. The mist-laden trees, the cold morning air, and the silent drift of the gray apparition create a haunting tableau that lingers in memory long after the forest is left behind. Whether a ghost, a spirit, or a manifestation of residual energy, the figure embodies the forest's mystery. A presence that observes, floats, and vanishes, tethered to a place where human understanding is limited, and where some corners of the natural world remain untamed and profoundly unknowable. Witnesses leave with the knowledge that, in Deer Isle, not all that moves in the forest walks upon the ground, and not all that is seen can ever be fully understood. Pleasant River Forest, tucked along the winding streams of Maine, is a quiet expanse of mixed hardwoods and evergreens, where sunlight dapples the forest floor by day, and shadows stretch long and deep by night. For most visitors, it is a place of serene trails, gentle streams, and the occasional glimpse of wildlife. Yet, among the locals and those who have ventured deep into its heart, one particular tree stands apart, drawing whispers of unease and fascination. The singing tree. It is an oak, ancient and towering, with a gnarled trunk and branches that twist toward the sky as if reaching for something unseen. At first glance, it seems like any other old tree in the forest, but after dark, it reveals its uncanny nature. The singing tree does not hum in response to the wind or rain. Those who approach it at night describe a low, melodic vibration that seems to emanate from within the tree itself. The sound is subtle, at first a faint murmur, almost indistinguishable from the natural forest noises, but as one nears, it becomes distinct, a soft, resonant humming that feels both inviting and disquieting. Some visitors swear the melody changes depending on who is listening, a haunting tune that seems tailored to the emotions of the observer. The sound is never loud enough to be overwhelming, but it penetrates deeply, reverberating in the chest and stirring a profound awareness of the forest around it. Carvings on the tree's bark add to its eerie reputation. Unlike the typical initials or hearts one finds on other trees, these carvings are older, weathered, and oddly precise. Names are etched in letters that do not match any known handwriting style, and many of them belong to people who cannot be traced or have long since disappeared. Locals avoid touching the markings, fearing that doing so might invoke the attention of whatever force resides within the oak. Some believe the carvings are remnants of visitors who came seeking the tree's song and never returned, their names left as silent testaments of their presence. Those who camp near the singing tree report experiences that defy ordinary explanation. Many awaken in the middle of the night to find the hum vibrating faintly near their tent or sleeping bag, even when the air is perfectly still. Some describe the sensation as a presence, a subtle vibration brushing against the skin or through the air, as if the tree itself is aware of their proximity. Pets brought along on these trips often react nervously, growling or whimpering without visible cause, and some refuse to sleep within sight of the oak. Human perception seems heightened in its vicinity, with sounds, shadows, and even the night sky appearing distorted or intensified. Sightings of a form or figure associated with the tree are rare but chilling. A few hikers claim to have glimpsed a faint, misty shape near its trunk, vanishing the instant it is looked at directly. Others describe feeling a cold draft, carrying the faint smell of earth, moss, and an unidentifiable sweetness, as though the tree exhales memories rather than air. Those who linger too long often report disorientation, an inability to retrace their steps through the forest trails, and the eerie sensation that the forest itself subtly shifts around the oak, guiding them toward or away from it. The origin of the singing tree remains a mystery. Folklore among locals suggests that it may be tied to a tragic event long ago, though accounts vary. Some say it was the site of a ritual performed by early settlers or indigenous peoples, a tree imbued with energy meant to guide lost souls or preserve memories. Others speculate that the oak is a natural amplifier of ambient forest sounds, somehow converting the vibrations of the earth, air, and water into a resonant hum, though no scientific investigation has yet replicated the phenomenon. The consistency of the experiences reported by multiple independent visitors, however, hints at something beyond mere coincidence. The forest itself seems to respond to the singing tree. On nights when the hum is strongest, other sounds fade, the wind dims, animals quiet, and even the flowing river seems to soften its murmur. The branches of nearby trees sway subtly, though the air remains still, and shadows stretch unnaturally toward the oak. Some campers describe the feeling of a gentle pull, a magnetic sensation urging them closer to the tree, while others feel a compulsion to retreat. Whether one approaches or flees, the encounter leaves a lasting impression, lingering in thought long after the forest is left behind. Photographs and audio recordings have occasionally captured the tree's hum, but results are inconsistent. Cameras sometimes blur images of the oak's trunk or produce faint streaks of light around its branches. Audio devices occasionally pick up low-frequency vibrations, but the richness and tonal quality of the hum are rarely replicated. Those who try to record the phenomenon often report a sense of being watched during the attempt, adding an unsettling layer to the already mysterious experience. Visitors who respect the tree and observe from a distance often leave offerings or small notes, tokens meant to honor the presence rather than challenge it. Some inscribe names or messages into small pieces of paper and leave them in the tree's roots, believing that the oak listens to these whispers as part of its song. Others simply step away quietly, carrying the memory of the soft hum and the sense of being touched by something profoundly ancient and alive. Ultimately, the singing tree embodies the intersection of nature, memory, and the inexplicable. Its hum, the carvings of untraceable names, and the subtle presence felt by those nearby create a haunting tableau that resonates long after the forest is left behind. Pleasant River Forest is transformed at night into a place where the ordinary becomes extraordinary, where the quiet oak speaks in tones no human voice could replicate, and where visitors are reminded that some trees hold secrets that survive generations waiting for those who dare to listen. The experience of encountering the singing tree is unforgettable, a moment when the forest itself hums with a life beyond comprehension. offering both awe and unease, and a reminder that in the heart of the woods, some presences refuse to be silent. York Forest in Maine is a dense woodland of towering pines, maples, and oaks, bisected by winding trails that were once used as carriage roads in the 18th and 19th centuries. The forest is steeped in history, from colonial settlers to Revolutionary and Civil War activity, and it carries an aura that draws hikers, history enthusiasts, and paranormal seekers alike. Among its twisting roads and shadowed clearings, a legend persists of the Phantom Horseman, a spectral rider who roams the forest under the cover of fog and night, leaving an impression both chilling and unforgettable. The phenomenon is usually reported by travelers moving along the old carriage roads after dusk. Witnesses describe hearing the rhythmic strike of hooves on stone or dirt long before any figure appears, the sound precise and heavy, echoing across the forest in a way that seems impossible to locate. The sound often comes and goes unpredictably, sometimes approaching steadily, then retreating into silence. Those who pause or investigate frequently report a sudden thick fog descending from nowhere, as though the forest itself is shrouding the apparition. When the Phantom Horseman manifests, the sight is startling. Observers describe a horse of immense size and dark color, its hooves barely touching the ground as it moves with impossible grace and speed. The rider is cloaked entirely in black, face hidden beneath a hood or helmet, leaving only the impression of shadow. Unlike ordinary riders, he never glances back or slows, gliding through the trees or along the road as if drawn by a force beyond human comprehension. Even in moments of apparent proximity, he leaves no tracks on the earth, and the horse's presence is more felt than fully seen. Many accounts include sensory details that enhance the sense of otherworldliness. Witnesses often report a sudden chill in the air, accompanied by the faint scent of gunpowder, tobacco, or burning wood, as if the forest itself remembers the conflicts and skirmishes that took place centuries ago. The combination of scent, sound, and visual apparition creates an immersive experience, leaving observers shaken and disoriented. Those who attempt to follow the horse and rider rarely succeed, finding only an empty road, a rising fog, or the faint echo of hooves fading into the distance. The origins of the Phantom Horseman are as mysterious as the figure itself. Folklore suggests he is the restless spirit of a soldier or militia member who died during a skirmish in or near York Forest. Some stories claim he was ambushed while fleeing enemy forces, cursed to roam the forest eternally as punishment for desertion or cowardice. Others posit that the rider is tied to a larger spectral army, an echo of wartime trauma that manifests sporadically in the forest. Regardless of the version, all legends agree that the horseman is not malevolent in the traditional sense. He does not attack, but his presence conveys urgency, warning, and an undeniable weight of history. Local historians and folklorists note the forest's acoustics and terrain may contribute to the phenomenon. The old carriage roads are lined with dense trees and uneven stonework, amplifying the sound of footsteps or hooves. Fog, which settles frequently in the valley and along streams, creates visual distortions that could make ordinary riders or animals appear ethereal. Yet, these natural explanations fail to account for the consistency of witness accounts, the simultaneous occurrence of auditory and olfactory phenomena, or the complete absence of tracks or tangible evidence when the horseman vanishes. The experience of encountering the Phantom Horseman is often transformative. Travelers report a mix of fear, awe, and reverence, as if standing in the presence of something much larger than themselves. The rhythm of hooves, the dark figure gliding through mist, and the lingering echoes of war create a tableau that feels frozen in time, connecting the present forest to the turbulent past. Many leave the forest with a heightened awareness of history, memory, and the stories embedded in the landscape itself. Photography and audio recording attempts have yielded mixed results. Cameras sometimes capture a blurred shadow where the figure appeared, while audio devices occasionally pick up faint, rhythmic thuds resembling hooves. However, the clarity and intensity described by witnesses are rarely reproduced. This inconsistency has contributed to the legend, as it reinforces the idea that the horseman is a presence that cannot be fully contained or documented, existing at the boundary of the visible and invisible. Rangers and guides in York Forest advise caution and respect. The legend of the Phantom Horseman has discouraged night travel along certain roads, particularly in areas prone to fog or dense tree cover. Campers and hikers who encounter strange sounds, scents, or shadows are urged to remain calm and move deliberately, avoiding attempts to chase or confront the figure. For many, observation from a safe distance, combined with awareness of historical context, is enough to experience the haunting without putting themselves at risk. Visitors who experience the horseman often share their stories around campfires or with local residents, adding to the rich tapestry of folklore surrounding York Forest. Each account varies slightly, but recurring elements, the dark rider, silent gliding, rhythmic hooves, fog, gunpowder scent, and faint cries create a recognizable pattern that lends credibility to the legend. Some regard the horseman as a guardian of the forest, an echo of the past, ensuring that the land is remembered. Others see him as a warning, a spectral reminder that history is never fully gone and that some places are charged with lingering energy. Ultimately, the Phantom Horseman embodies the intersection of history, nature, and the unexplained. York Forest, with its twisting carriage roads, dense canopy, and frequent fog, becomes a stage upon which the past and present converge. The appearance of the horseman is fleeting, yet the impression is lasting. A sense that the forest holds stories in its midst, that the ground itself remembers the footsteps of those who came before, and that some presences refuse to be forgotten. Travelers leave with a lingering awareness that in York Forest, the echoes of war, the rhythm of hooves, and the drifting shadow of a cloaked rider are never far from the mind. Once encountered a haunting that endures long after the fog clears. Caribou Wilderness, sprawling across northern Maine, is a vast expanse of pine forests, marshlands, and quiet lakes. A place where humans feel small against the scale of the wilderness. Hunters, hikers, and campers who venture here often remark on the silence dense and heavy, broken only by the wind rustling through pine needles or the occasional call of a loon. Yet, amid the natural beauty, locals speak in wary tones of a more unsettling presence, the man without eyes, a spectral figure said to roam the forest, unsettling those unfortunate enough to encounter him. The legend describes a man wearing a tattered coat, his form gaunt and unnerving. What makes him unmistakable is his face or the lack of one. Witnesses claim he has no eyes, just smooth, pale flesh where sockets should be. Some describe a sense of weightless drifting in his step, as if he glides silently over the forest floor, while others report him moving with a deliberate, slow pace that feels inexorably drawn toward them. The first encounter often comes without warning, a glimpse through the trees, a pale shape standing motionless, and an almost magnetic pull that makes turning away feel impossible. Hunters in particular are the most frequent witnesses, perhaps due to the solitary nature of their activities. They recount spotting the figure near streams or along deer trails, motionless, watching from a distance. At first, it appears harmless, simply standing in the shadows, yet the unease grows quickly. The absence of eyes seems to distort reality. Observers feel the man's gaze on them, not through sight, but through a penetrating awareness that sees into thoughts, intentions, and fears. Many describe a sensation of being read, as though the forest itself has borrowed a human form to convey something profound and unsettling. Those who encounter him often report whispers following the sighting. The whispers are unique, a soft, hissing murmur that seems to echo inside the mind rather than through the air. Strangely, the whispers often mimic the observer's own thoughts, repeating doubts, fears, or secrets, as if the forest itself were speaking through the figure. Hunters have described hearing their own inner voice call out questions, confessions, or anxieties, the words indistinguishable from their own thoughts, until a cold chill confirms they are being mirrored. Some experience a deep sense of urgency, as if the man is trying to communicate a warning, while others feel nothing but dread, as though the wilderness has become sentient, reflecting their own consciousness back at them. One of the most disturbing accounts comes from a hiker who wandered into the northern marshlands in late autumn. He reported seeing the man without eyes at the edge of a clearing, standing silently with the tattered coat rippling as if caught in a phantom wind. When he moved to leave, he found the whispering began softly at first, then clearly, in his own voice, recounting thoughts he had never spoken aloud. Over the following days, the hiker noticed he could hear the whispers even away from the forest, faintly echoing in the quiet moments before sleep. The experience left him shaken, questioning the boundary between self and forest, thought and voice, reality and apparition. The origins of the man without eyes are uncertain, shrouded in speculation and folklore. Some locals suggest he may be the ghost of a trapper or woodsman who perished in a blizzard, his body lost among the trees and snow. Others believe he is a manifestation of the wilderness itself, a spirit created by the forest to warn, observe, or test those who traverse its depths. More ominously, some think the figure represents an ancient consciousness tied to the land, capable of using human form to interface with the minds of intruders. The soft crunch of needles underfoot, the distant babble of streams, and the ever-present mist contribute to a disorienting environment where sound, light, and perception are altered. Local guides and rangers warn that the man without eyes is best respected from a distance. Confronting or approaching him is considered dangerous, as he may respond by intensifying the whispering or creating visions that echo deeply in the mind. Instead, those who sense his presence are advised to remain calm, observe silently, and retreat along familiar paths. Many who follow this advice leave with an unforgettable memory, an awareness of the forest as a living, thinking entity, and a story that will be retold with awe and trepidation for years to come. Ultimately, the man without eyes embodies the intersection of fear, nature, and consciousness. Caribou Wilderness becomes more than a forest. It is a place where the line between observer and observed blurs, where thoughts can echo externally, and where a figure in tattered gray reminds visitors that some presences are older and more aware than any human mind can fully grasp. Those who encounter him leave with an unsettling realization. In these woods, the forest speaks, and sometimes it speaks through the eyes of none. Millinocket Forest, sprawling across northern Maine, is a landscape of dense evergreens, moss-covered rocks, and winding streams, with trails that carry hikers, hunters, and explorers deep into its secluded heart. Beneath the forest's tranquil surface lies a layer of history, remnants of human industry and ambition that time has almost entirely reclaimed. Among these relics, the ghostly legend of the rusted train persists, a story whispered by locals and recounted by travelers who claim to have heard or seen inexplicable signs of a train long after the tracks disappeared. The origin of the rusted train dates back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries, when logging was a dominant industry in the region. Railways were built through the thick forests to transport timber to sawmills, carving paths through hills and across streams. These trains were crucial to the local economy, but they were also dangerous. Accidents were common, and several trains reportedly derailed in remote areas, leaving crews stranded and sometimes killed in the wilderness. Over decades, as logging declined and tracks were removed, the forest swallowed the iron pathways, leaving little more than overgrown embankments, rusted ties, and memories etched into the land. Yet, according to legend, something of the trains lingers, a spectral echo of their passage, known as the rusted train. Travelers describe encountering the rusted train in subtle, eerie ways. Most often, it begins with sound, the distant rumble of wheels rolling over tracks, the low groan of iron bending, and a whistle that is both mournful and hollow. The noise comes without visible cause, sometimes at night when the forest is still and fog clings to the trees. Hikers and campers have reported the sound approaching steadily through the woods, then receding as suddenly as it appeared. The auditory phenomenon is often accompanied by physical sensations. The air seems to vibrate with the train, as imagined momentum, and the forest floor trembles faintly, as if the earth remembers the weight of iron and timber passing over it. Visual encounters, though rarer, are even more unsettling. Witnesses describe seeing lights flickering through the tree's headlights, or lanterns from the engine, or sparks flying as if metal still strikes metal. Some report glimpses of the train itself, an outline of cars and a locomotive, shrouded in mist and partially transparent, weaving between trunks as though traveling on invisible rails. These apparitions move with precise motion, keeping to a path that aligns with where the old tracks once lay. Observers often hesitate to follow, sensing that any attempt to approach risks drawing them too close to a force, both unnatural and tethered to the forest's memory. The rusted train is closely tied to environmental conditions, particularly wind and fog. Many witnesses note that the sounds and lights intensify when the wind carries air through certain valleys or bends, and then vanish when the direction changes. Fog seems to enhance the phenomenon, blurring the forest into an almost otherworldly theater, where sound and light gain an eerie, almost tangible presence. The consistency of these conditions across decades suggests a pattern, though whether it is natural, supernatural, or a combination remains a matter of speculation. Some locals believe that the rusted train is a form of residual energy, a replay of events from the logging era that has become imprinted on the land. Others claim it is an active spirit, a consciousness bound to the trains, the woods, and the men who perished in accidents. Hunters and hikers often speak of a sense of urgency or warning in the sounds, as though the train is both a memory and a message, reminding visitors of the dangers and histories embedded in the forest. Those who ignore the sounds or attempt to venture toward them often leave the area shaken, reporting headaches, chills, or an unshakable sense of being observed. The forest itself seems aware of the rusted train. Old embankments resonate when the sound passes. Trees sway in response to phantom vibrations, and streams sometimes carry reflections of light that do not correspond to any natural source. Hikers have described an uncanny feeling that the forest's shadows are shifting, forming corridors or tunnels aligned with the old railway. Even without directly witnessing the train, the atmosphere near the sites where it appears is thick with tension and a sense of history pressing in from all sides. Attempts to record the rusted train are rarely successful. Cameras sometimes capture streaks of light, audio devices pick up distant rumbles. But the full experience, combined auditory, visual, and emotional, is difficult to reproduce. Some theorists argue this is evidence of a psychic or residual phenomenon, rather than a purely physical occurrence. Others maintain that the forest itself, dense and resonant, creates unique acoustic effects that, when paired with imagination and historical knowledge, explain the haunting sounds. Yet, the number of independent, consistent reports over decades makes complete skepticism difficult. Those who experience the rusted train often leave the forest with a profound awareness of its history. The combination of sound, light, and sensation forms an encounter that is impossible to forget. Even after leaving, travelers report dreams of iron tracks disappearing into fog, the echo of whistles at twilight, or the sensation of wheels rolling beneath their feet. The rusted train becomes more than a story. It is a connection to the past, a reminder that the land remembers, and that some remnants of human activity refuse to vanish completely. Ultimately, the rusted train embodies a collision of history, memory, and the unexplained. Millinocket Forest becomes a stage where the past plays endlessly, a phantom of industry echoing through trees, fog, and stone. Witnesses leave with the knowledge that the woods are more than quiet trails and wildlife. They are a living archive of those who labored, suffered, and vanished, with the rusted train as a spectral reminder that time does not erase all footprints. In these woods, travelers are not merely passing through, they are threading through layers of memory, sound, and light, where iron rails, ghostly engines, and the echoes of men long gone continue their eternal journey. Deep in the heart of western Maine lies Eustis Woods, a stretch of wilderness where pine, spruce, and birch trees grow so thick that daylight struggles to reach the forest floor. The land is ancient, silent, and often shrouded in a cold mist that rises from the nearby Dead River. It's a place of serene isolation, ideal for campers seeking peace until the laughter begins. For decades, stories have circulated about something that lives among those trees. It's not an animal anyone can identify, nor does it sound like a person. Those who have spent nights in Eustis Woods speak of an unsettling sound that begins faintly, often mistaken for the wind at first. A high lilting giggle that ripples through the treetops and fades before it can be traced. But as darkness deepens, it always returns. Louder, closer. Campers describe the laughter as wrong. It has a tone that's almost playful, like a child's laugh distorted by static. It doesn't echo in a natural way. It moves, sliding from one treetop to another, circling the camp as though it's watching. No animal native to the region, not owls, not foxes, not coyotes, makes a sound like it. The first night, most people dismiss it. By the second, when it comes closer, doubt turns to fear. One of the earliest documented accounts came from a pair of hunters in the late 1950s. They had set up camp near a small clearing off the logging road. Around midnight, as they sat near the fire, both men heard laughter drifting down from the trees. Thinking someone was playing a prank, they called out. The sound paused, then returned, from directly behind them. When they spun around with their flashlights, there was nothing but blackness between the trunks. The firelight trembled, and they swore the shadows seemed to lean closer. By morning, they found claw marks in the soil near their tent, long and deep, as though something had crouched beside them during the night. In more recent years, the phenomenon has been caught on audio. Several campers have uploaded recordings online, capturing that strange laughter echoing through the forest. The sound rises and falls irregularly, sometimes giggling, sometimes breaking into short, rasping bursts. Analysis has failed to match it to any known animal species. Some experts suggested it might be distorted feedback from distant human activity, but the recordings show no indication of that. The sound is localized, clear, and accompanied by rustling branches high overhead, as if something large is moving through the canopy. Locals have their own theories. Some say the laughter belongs to a forest spirit, angered by campers disturbing sacred ground. Others whisper about a hermit who once lived there in the 1800s, a man who went mad after losing his family in a winter storm and was said to mimic animal calls at night to lure travelers. When his body was finally found, the woods were silent for weeks. But after he was buried, the laughter began. They say his spirit never left, still calling out, not in sorrow, but in twisted amusement. What makes the Eustis Woods legend truly disturbing is the pattern. Witnesses say that once the laughter begins, it follows a predictable cycle. On the first night, it stays distant, like a faint whisper between the trees. On the second, it circles the campsite, moving faster, its tone sharper and more deliberate, almost mocking. By the third night, it feels near enough to touch, and the faint brush of movement just beyond the thin fabric separating them from the dark. In the morning, there are always signs. Claw marks in the dirt, three-pronged and uneven. Small piles of stones arranged in strange shapes, faces, some say with hollow eyes and crooked mouths. No one has ever seen who or what makes them. Attempts to stay awake and watch usually end with exhaustion or inexplicable blackouts, as if the forest itself induces sleep when it wants privacy. One story, told by a group of college students who camped there in the early 2000s, stands out for its detail. They arrived on a Friday evening, set up the tents, and built a small fire near the river. Around midnight, the laughter began. They recorded it on a phone high-pitched, echoing, weaving through the air like wind through glass bottles. The second night, the sound came closer. They swore it moved around them in a perfect circle. On the third night, it stopped entirely, replaced by silence, so complete that even the insects went quiet. The next morning, their tents were surrounded by stone faces, arranged with eerie precision, all pointing inward toward where they slept. When they packed up and left, they found claw marks carved into the trees along the trail, leading deeper into the forest. The recordings they took were analyzed later. Experts confirmed the laughter was real and spatially consistent with movement around the microphone. But the frequency didn't match any known mammal, bird, or human voice. It fluctuated between ranges that would require both human vocal cords and something beyond them, as if the sound were layered, part natural, part mechanical. The phenomenon continues today. Rangers sometimes hear it from afar while patrolling the edge of the woods. They refuse to camp overnight there. Locals warn newcomers not to stay more than 2 nights in a row. The 3rd night, they say, is when it decides to show itself, though no one has ever seen what it truly is. Some believe it hides in the upper branches, a shape cloaked in shadow, moving faster than the eye can follow. Others insist it's not a creature at all, but the forest itself, laughing an echo of something ancient and unseen that delights in fear. Visitors who leave Eustace Woods often describe strange after effects. For days afterward, they hear faint giggling in the distance, especially at night. Radios pick up bursts of static that almost sound like laughter. One camper even claimed their reflections smiled when they didn't. Whether it's spirit, echo, or illusion, the laughter in the dark remains one of Maine's most chilling mysteries. It's a sound that feels alive, playful, intelligent, and cruel. Those who hear it once never forget it, and for some, it seems to follow them long after they've left the forest, whispering in dreams, circling unseen, always just behind the thin veil of night. There's a stretch of forest just beyond the quiet town of Bethel, Maine, a place the locals call Bethel Woods. To anyone passing through, it looks unremarkable. Dense trees, soft moss underfoot, a canopy that filters sunlight into thin, shifting beams. But step a little deeper, and you notice the first strange thing. There are no sounds, no birds, no rustling of animals, no insects humming in the underbrush. Only silence, vast, heavy, and alive. Locals say it's always been this way, at least since 1893. That was the year the Wilcox family disappeared. They were farmers who had built a small home at the edge of the woods, a tidy 2-room cabin with a porch that faced the sunrise. Neighbors described them as kind, hard-working people, a husband, a wife, and 2 children. But one cold autumn morning, a visitor arrived from town and found the house silent. The door stood open, the fire burned low in the hearth, and dinner sat on the table, warm, untouched. No one was there. The search lasted weeks. Dozens of townsfolk combed through the trees, calling their names, following tracks that led nowhere. Dogs refused to go deeper than a certain point in the forest, whining and pulling at their leashes. Eventually, the searchers found something. 4 sets of footprints near a clearing, spaced evenly apart, as if the family had stood there for some time. The prints ended abruptly at the edge of a small pond. No sign of a struggle, no bodies, just still water and silence. The area was eventually abandoned, left to grow wild. But even now, more than a century later, that silence remains. Hikers say the forest feels wrong, too still, too aware. The deeper you go, the more the air changes. It thickens, pressing against your chest like invisible weight. Breathing becomes harder. Some describe it as a sadness, others as dread. A few call it mourning, as though the forest remembers what happened and grieves in eternal quiet. The most disturbing thing, though, happens when you leave. People report hearing a faint whisper behind them as they step out of the woods, their own name, spoken softly, almost pleadingly. Some say it's a woman's voice. Others claim it sounds like a child. One hiker swore he heard his name 3 times, each repetition quieter than the last, as if the forest were begging him not to go. In 1972, a group of university students from Bangor decided to spend the night there as part of a folklore study. They set up recording equipment, hoping to capture evidence of the silence, the absence of natural sound. The recordings began normally, filled with static and the faint sound of wind. But around midnight, something strange happened. The microphones picked up low, rhythmic pulses, almost like a heartbeat, faint but steady. Then, a whispering sound began, layered and indistinct. The students couldn't make out words, only fragments, like voices speaking through water. When they returned to camp in the morning, one of their tents was collapsed, and the soil beneath it was disturbed, as if something had been crawling beneath the ground. The audio was later analyzed, Experts confirmed that the pulse-like sound was not mechanical interference. It was organic, but unlike any human or animal pattern. As for the whispers, one phrase repeated throughout, "Come back." The voices were quiet but clear, overlapping in a chorus that seemed both sorrowful and urgent. The tape was eventually sealed away in the university archives after one of the students reported hearing the whispers in her dorm room weeks later. Locals still warn against entering Bethel Woods alone. Hunters avoid the area entirely, claiming that the forest swallows sound. One described how his rifle misfired, not because of malfunction, but because there was no echo, not even the rustle of birds taking flight. It was as if the noise had been absorbed, erased by something unseen. He left immediately, and when he reached his truck, he heard a child's voice behind him say his name, clear as day. A few theories tried to explain the phenomenon. Some suggest natural causes, magnetic interference, underground caverns distorting acoustics, or even carbon dioxide buildup from decaying vegetation affecting perception. But those who've experienced Bethel Woods firsthand say it feels deeper than science. They describe it as a presence, ancient, sorrowful, and intelligent. It doesn't chase or attack. It watches, it listens, and it remembers. One of the most chilling accounts came from a woman named Ellen Briggs in 1998. She had been hiking with her husband when they became separated near dusk. She called for him, but her voice seemed to go nowhere, swallowed by the silence. Hours passed. When she finally stumbled back toward the trailhead, she heard her husband calling her name from behind. She turned and saw him standing between the trees, about 20 feet away, smiling faintly. But something felt off. His eyes were wrong, empty, unfocused, like glass. She blinked, and he was gone. When she found the real him later, waiting near the car, he said he had never entered the woods. Ellen never returned to Bethel Woods. She told friends that for weeks afterward, she'd awake in the night to hear her name whispered near her ear, not from outside the house, but from within the room. The Wilcox home is long gone now, reclaimed by the earth. Only a faint outline of its foundation remains beneath layers of moss and pine needles. But some visitors claim they can still smell smoke, faint, lingering, as if a fire still burns there somewhere unseen. A few say they've glimpsed candlelight between the trees, flickering in the distance, moving deeper into the woods. No one who's heard the whispers ever forgets them. Some say the voices aren't trying to harm anyone. They're lonely echoes of the vanished family, calling out, hoping someone will answer. Others believe the forest itself is sentient, absorbing those who enter and adding their voices to its eternal silence. Whatever the truth, Bethel Woods remains one of Maine's most unsettling places, a forest that doesn't just silence the world around it, but replaces that silence with something alive. It doesn't shout, it doesn't chase, it mourns, and it remembers every name spoken within it. Those who have heard the final whisper describe it the same way, faint, intimate, and filled with sorrow. It speaks your name softly, like an old friend bidding farewell. And if you ever go back, they say, you'll never hear anything again, not even your own footsteps. Because in Bethel Woods, silence isn't absence, it's presence, it's waiting. The forests of Maine hold more than moss and shadow. They hold the echoes of every soul that ever entered and never came out the same. Some say the whispers are only wind or memory. But deep down, you know better. You can feel them when you close your eyes. So if you ever find yourself walking a Maine trail at night and the air turns cold, if the trees start to sway though the wind has stopped, don't listen too closely, because once you hear your name in the whispers, the forest knows you, and it will never forget. Thank you, traveler of the strange, for joining me on this dark journey. If these tales sent a shiver through your soul, leave a light burning, subscribe for more haunted wanderings, and return soon. Because in places like these, the lost are never really gone. They're only waiting for someone to listen.